This is Adam Graham from Pretty Much the Present, bringing you a week of old-time radio podcasts. These episodes were originally released back in 2011, and we're releasing them here pretty much as is, with only some extraneous bits such as the opening from all of the episodes after the first episode removed. Because these are old, it should be noted that any offers or promotions mentioned in the episode may not be valid unless they're currently mentioned on the Great Detectives website. Here now is a week of old-time radio detective podcast. Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham. If you have a comment, email it to me, box13@greatdetectives.net. Give us a call, 208-991-4783, and become one of our friends on Facebook, facebook.com/Radio Detectives. Well, this episode of the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio is brought to you by the financial support of our listeners. And today I want to say thank you to Dan, who just recently sent along a donation received on Christmas Day. Thank you so much for your support. And we'll be sending on access to our premium site, which we do for all donations of $7 or more. Thanks again. Well, it's time for our first episode of Barrie Craig of the new year, with only one episode between last week's, I should say 2 episodes between last week's show and this week's. From October 13th of 1953, it's Fog Over Murder.
William Gargan stars as Barrie Craig, confidential investigator.
What's in a name, a poet once said, and he was so right. You can list every guy as Smith or Dokes, and it doesn't make any difference. The stiff down below positively doesn't care what the tombstone reads.
The National Broadcasting Company presents William Gargan in another transcribed drama of mystery and adventure with America's #1 detective, Barrie Craig, confidential investigator.
Barrie Craig speaking. A case sometimes comes at you all the way from left field. It's out of the ordinary, and the familiar ingredients, familiar to a confidential cop, seem to be missing. At first glance, that is. Said familiar ingredients, of course, being theft, homicide, and blackmail. The nice, homey, everyday stuff of crime that keeps a cop in love with his work. In this case, even the kickoff was unfamiliar. The chap setting up the deal for me was a mind doctor, a skinny guy with horn-rimmed glasses and a high forehead, who looked like he got all his nourishment from pills.
This is an unusual thing for me, Mr. Craig, to consult with a detective.
This is an unusual joint for me to be in, so we're even.
Now, this patient that I will discuss with you, I've worked with him for months, with encouraging results.
I'll start off with his name.
His name is, temporarily, Clark Smith.
Temporarily?
A symptom of his ailment is an amnesia. He resists his own true identity.
Doesn't want to remember who he is, huh?
Yes, in a manner of speaking.
That's bad.
Well, why do you say that?
From a cop's point of view, disregarding the medicine, a guy only tries to lose his identity for a pretty grim reason. Some crime he doesn't want to answer to.
Oh, there is such a possibility, yes.
Still think you want to make a police case out of this Clark Smith?
Well, there is the risk you suggest. I have thought of that. Restore this man to his own identity, but with an unhappy result.
He faces the consequences of a crime. Capture, trial, and sentence.
But if this risk is not taken, it's equally critical for Clark Smith.
Meaning the shape he's presently in, huh?
Depressed, malingering, sick with anxieties. He cannot function as a social being. He hides from the world. Yes, he interests me, this Clark Smith. I would like to help him find himself, help him to face his reality.
Only your medicine goes just so far.
I need a detective such as you to associate with the case. There are facts to ascertain, the special things in which you are a specialist, and in which my science is helpless.
Got any clues to his background? Who he was before he became Clark Smith?
Oh, yes, I have many. I've uncovered many clues in my 6 months now of clinical examination. In my patient's moments of unconscious association, he has given me many material clues that you'll find helpful in your search.
Well, clues like...
Well, words, for example. Oh, I have them recorded here. Midvale. Now, there have been many reminiscences involving the word Midvale.
Sounds like a town.
Yes, or a school, I have thought. A high school, perhaps, judging by the level of my patient's speech. The education it suggests. And the word Pomatone.
An Indian word.
And very lyrical. The word is always said with a caress, always with a curious tenderness of feeling.
Like Clark Smith loves it.
Yes.
Pomatone. Could be a river. A place to swim or fish for trout. A man can fall in love with a river and never forget it. Remember it all his life, even with his mind dead to everything else.
Yes, you're very perceptive. A river, yes. I have thought so, too.
2 good clues, those. Trace a guy back to where he came from, back to where memory cut off. Does Clark Smith know what you're up to with me?
Not exactly. He knows in his own way. He wants to recover his identity, appreciates my interest, yet...
He's scared.
Well, he may resent what we do. You may find him very uncooperative.
Where can I see him?
I'll give you his address, but please be very gentle with him. Do not press too hard.
I found Clark Smith at home. Home was a beach shack out on Long Island. Shangri-La made out of plywood and thumbtacks, serenaded by big seagulls with wing spreads like eagles. Smith looked the part of a beachcomber. He wore faded blue jeans slit at the sides, and a fish knife in his belt with a mean-looking blade. He gave me the long once-over.
It's a 35-pounder.
No kidding.
The striped bass. I pulled her in at the Anthony Lighthouse. I broke 2 lines on her.
Sounds like quite a battle.
Quite a battle, yeah. You'll find her in the shed, packed tonight. Leave the money on the table.
I'm not a fish buyer. I'm Barrie Craig.
Barrie Craig?
Right now associated with Dr. Vanner. To help you, Smith. Help you get back to the life you belong to.
I belong here. What are you after with me?
I said to help you. Dr. Vanner and me. We're on your side. We're your friends.
I don't want help.
Sure you do. If you didn't, you'd never have gone to Dr. Vanner in the first place.
I went to find peace, so I'd calm down. To fish, you need to be calm.
You went to find yourself. Don't back away from one big truth, Smith. You're one big inner drive.
Mr. Craig, I'm afraid.
Sure you are. I understand. But I say you can't be any worse off than you are now. Have a little faith, Smith.
Faith?
Midvale and Pomatone. What do the words mean to you?
I don't know. I know the words, but I don't know what they mean. I don't know.
Okay, forget them. I'll try to find out another way. If I'm stuck, I'll come back to you. We'll go over it again. We'll go out in a boat and fish and talk. Midvale and Pomatone. Clues sometimes take you for a ride around the moon. You're a skywriter spelling out the word futility. Other times it all comes easy, too easy. You don't have to be a detective, just a researchist with a world almanac. The section that says index of towns and places and rivers. I found the river Pomatone merely by running down a line of names of American rivers. The Pomatone River, but it wasn't in any town called Midvale. The Pomatone River was in Farrington, a town in Jersey. I kept hunting Midvale in the book. Anything named Midvale in the town of Farrington. I checked school, high schools, and universities, then industries. Under industries, I found it. The Midvale Bottling Works, located in Farrington. I had reason to hop a train to Jersey. One-horse Farrington had a sheriff. It also had a barber, both rolled into one. The sheriff and the barber were one and the same guy. Came a shortage of lawbreakers, at least there was always hair to cut. I phoned you in advance of coming, Sheriff. You know why I'm here.
Yes, I know. But just a minute till I get out of this coat. Can't sheriff in a barber's coat.
Why not?
Just not right, that's all.
Now can we get down to it?
Not yet. Can't sheriff without my badge. Here it is. Now, about this missing feller.
I took this snapshot. I sneaked the picture. The guy's sensitive to attention, so don't expect too much. Well, ever see him before?
Yeah, picture's kind of blurry.
My $2 camera, I'm sorry.
No, can't say I ever seen this one. What there's to see. But you don't need to be showing me pictures. Only one man's disappeared from Farrington in the years I've been barber.
How about in the years you've been sheriff?
Same answer. Lloyd Beamer. He's the only one who's disappeared and ain't never turned up. It's 7 years now. Maybe 8, coming right down to it.
Fill me in on Lloyd Beamer.
Oh, ain't much filling I can do. Just that Beamer ran the Midvale bottling works. That's right on the county line. Owned it, Beamer did, till he went.
Went where?
Can't say. Nobody can say. Bit flighty, that Lloyd Beamer. His head was always in books. Lived in the town, but you wouldn't know it. Kept to himself. Even on election day, never showed up to vote.
Imagine. Who runs the bottling works now?
Mrs. Beamer. That's Lloyd's wife, Polly. She's there now, minding things. If you'll be wanting to talk to her...
I'll be wanting to. The first thing that meets your eye in a bottling works are bottles. Lots and lots of bottles. I found a door marked private and used it. On the inside of the door was somebody who looked like privacy was wasted on her. Too many good looks to keep them all to herself. A face you'd expect to find in Tahiti, never in a bottling works.
Yes?
Am I intruding?
You've already intruded. You're chilly?
I always am in refrigerated rooms. How about a warming smile?
I'll have you arrested.
You didn't let me finish. A warm smile of gratitude on account of the great thing I'm about to do for you.
What is that?
Reunite you with your husband.
My husband?
Uh-huh. Don't you want to be?
Is this some practical joke?
I'm a comedian, only up to a point. Well, what's the matter?
Matter?
You're green around the gills.
I feel faint. Your remarks, I was utterly unprepared. I'm all right now.
Well, take more time.
No. Please talk.
Your husband, Lloyd Beamer, has been missing.
For more than 6 years, yes.
I've got a fellow I think could be Lloyd Beamer.
It's impossible.
Why?
Why? Because in all these years, there's never been a word.
That makes it strange, but not impossible. A man loses his memory. How does he know who to write to, be in touch with?
This person, you say he cannot remember?
Amnesia of a kind. I'm piecing his past together, reconstructing a picture. I'm a detective from New York, Barrie Craig.
How did you come upon this person?
You keep saying this person.
I've come to think of my husband as dead. I've accepted it as so.
Why?
Why? So I could find peace with myself. Stifle imagination, the nightmare of thinking, not knowing. I was deserted, Mr. Craig, by a man with violent currents in his nature. A man bent on destroying everything around him and himself. It was better to think of him as dead, so I could have some peace, some life.
I'm sorry. I guess I was a jolt to you. A trifle crude in my approach, maybe. Of course, this man might not be your missing husband. It may turn out that he's not.
But you seemed so very sure before.
Some clues relate him to the town of Farrington, to these bottling works. Clues, but they may be coincidental. You never know.
What?
The lady.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I think I'm going to faint.
Lady. It was a faint, the deadest faint I'd ever seen. A faint like death, and the frightening thing about it, it could be death. A heart attack from the shock of it all. For all the pulse I was getting, the next move could be the coroner's. You know that someone apparently dead isn't when she flutters her eyes at you. A corpse generally can't. Polly Beamer flooded her eyes at me. I was close enough to admire their color.
Oh, what happened?
You passed out, a dead faint, and no pulse like your heart had stopped pumping blood.
I'm sorry if I unnerved you.
I've got a few gray hairs as a memento. I hate to say hello to a girl and have her promptly drop dead.
The news you brought me, it was so overwhelming.
Apart from the news itself, what else gave you conniptions?
What else?
The prospect of a return of Lloyd Beamer, your missing husband. I don't think you fancy the idea as a woman.
No, I don't. We were never so much of a couple. Besides, I've built a whole new life for myself since...
A new life meaning a new guy?
New interests, a new independence and outlook.
You're glossing over the new guy?
There are men in my life, of course.
Men or a man?
I'm young. I have a right.
No question of it. All right, then, the way it stacks, if my party is the missing Lloyd Beamer, reassuming his proper station can create complications.
Complications?
He isn't wanted. No welcome home. Rough on a guy, kind of. A return to identity at long last, only to find himself on the scrap heap.
I don't think this person you talk about is my husband.
You mean you hope he isn't. But we'll soon know. I've got a couple of more questions.
Yes?
Assuming my party is Lloyd Beamer, I've given you an idea of the condition he's in.
Loss of memory, you said.
Yes, an acute case. He's been under medical care. Now I ask you, why would Lloyd Beamer suffer a loss of memory?
I don't understand the question.
The medic handling Beamer hinted that this patient maybe helped induce his own condition. Blanked out so as not to remember something too painful. Blanked out to escape being Lloyd Beamer, if you get me.
Yes, I do understand you.
Again, assuming this is your husband. So what was he running from?
What was he running from?
Trouble, a crime maybe, something he was guilty of, and the fear of discovery?
There was nothing like that in my husband's affairs.
Okay for that. I'm glad to hear it. Then the escape was for, let's say, strictly personal reasons. Personal problems of non-criminal character.
Lloyd was an eccentric, secretive. He never could quite fit into the group. He found this business, intolerable. He found marriage too commonplace.
I see. Call him a pathological personality. One last question.
Yes?
Whoever listens in on talk in your office, does he do it with your approval or on his own?
Well, what do you mean?
I'm looking straight ahead. Into that mirror on your wall. There where the safe is. Twice so far I've seen a face in the mirror. A face not my own. I'm not two-faced, lady, so I assume there's been me and somebody else. Somebody peeking through the connecting door behind me. This door. Peeking and eavesdropping.
Well, there's nobody.
Not now. He's gotten an earful and decamped. You don't care?
Care?
About being eavesdropped on?
I don't know that we have.
We have, believe it. Who was it?
I don't know. We have 30 employees in the plant.
Heavy brows, eyes deep in his head. This connecting door behind me, he had it open to an aperture of 6 inches. Where does the door lead to? Well?
It leads to the office of the plant manager.
Namely?
Howie. Roy Howie.
I'll go introduce myself. Oh, by the way, pictures. Got any around of your missing husband?
Why, yes, at home somewhere, packed away.
I'd appreciate one, a good one, to take back to New York with me.
No, I won't give you any pictures.
Why not?
I'll do nothing to facilitate the return of this person you say may be Lloyd Beamer.
The man's sick. I'm asking you to help restore a man's memory.
I'll do nothing to facilitate that either.
Pretty shoddy attitude.
I don't care. I feel selfishly about this. We were through. I've let freedom grow around me, freedom from the nightmare of Lloyd Beamer. Why can't you let me alone? Why did you have to come here at all?
Roy Howie. Do I need a pass to get in to see him? The plant manager, Howie, had the perfect explanation.
Yes, I did over here. The fact is, I had some memoranda for Polly's signature. These forms. But I found her engaged with you.
You stood glued to that crack in the door.
Thinking that she'd be finished with you momentarily. I don't mind confessing that I was fascinated by what I heard, became absorbed in it.
Why?
Other people's business? A morsel of gossip? This is Farrington Township, Mr. Craig. Very little happens in Farrington. We're hungry here for something eventful. The sensational attracts us like moths to the flame. We're all of us talented eavesdroppers and busybodies. I'm being very frank.
Yeah, very frank and very, very artful.
I've read about New York private eyes, the unusual breed you are, your obsession with motives. Suspect everybody. Isn't that your daily religion?
You talk a glib line for a Jerkwater town bottling plant manager.
Snarl, curse, and break heads. That, too, is the classic cliché of the New York private eye. Well, why aren't you breaking my head, Mr. Craig?
An important thing to know about one-horse towns is how to get out alive. I'd called a local taxi to take me to the railroad depot, a mile run on a big ditch they called a road. Oh, the bumps I took, my insides were in a heap. At a bend in the road where spruce trees lining it made a perfect ambush, somebody tried to drop the rest of me in a heap. Oh, I got it in the right hand, the check writing hand. The local hack driver kept going, like he hadn't heard a thing. I got first aid at a shack that had a decalcomania emblem of mercy pasted on a window. The guy cauterizing my wound was a familiar face. I'd seen him before. He was the barber. Or did I mean the sheriff?
Regular doc's 14 miles over the hill.
Oh, switch to your painless method, why don't you?
Ain't much of a nick in that hand of yours. I'm treating it right.
Short of amputation.
Yeah. I'll bandage it up now, and you're as good as new.
What do I owe you?
50 cents. Same as for a haircut.
A bargain. Who shot me?
Can't say. I ain't investigated it yet.
But you've got a pretty good idea.
All right, I'll tell you. That Roy Howie's been shining up to Polly Beamer. Takes her on corn-husking parties and quilting bees. He's wild for her and infernally jealous, that fella.
I wasn't making a play for Polly.
You come in here with news about Lloyd Beamer. Now with Polly asking the judge to free her from a man who's been away so long, Roy Howie wasn't taking kindly to that.
Howie figures he's going to marry her, huh? When her divorce, or annulment, is it, comes through?
Howie's figuring that. That bottling works is the biggest thing in Farrington. It's a good marriage Howie's after.
I made hasty tracks out of dear Farrington Township. I had unexpected company on the train, right on the seat beside me, white-faced but smiling. A fetching smile that figured to melt men's hearts. Polly knew how to turn it on.
Surprised, Mr. Craig?
Not too. I figured if Howie failed to kill me, you'd try it another way.
I don't understand.
Charm me to death. And you're doing it.
Doing what?
Sitting closer than train regulations allow, and breathing on my neck.
Before what you said, Howie's failing to kill you?
Come off it, lady. It's you and Howie. One nod away from the altar. Wedded bliss the minute some judge signs a final paper. I popped in with a facsimile of your missing husband at a bad time.
All right. It's so. I won't attempt to lie to you. Howie and I are in love. Planning marriage.
But I gummed up the work.
If this person is who you say he is, I'm frightened.
Frightened enough to endorse murder?
Howie didn't attempt your life. Not really. He just meant to scare you, make you stop meddling in our lives. And I did not endorse it, Mr. Craig. Howie's impulsive, sometimes foolish. It was his own foolish scheme.
Which brings us to you sharing a seat with me.
To go with you and confront this person you say might be Lloyd Beamer. To see for myself.
Okay, we'll try it. But after I prepare him. You got a favorite New York hotel you can park in?
I have. The Warumbo.
We'll soon know whether you're still a wife or a bride-to-be. With Polly biting her nails at the Warumbo, I followed the seagulls to where my beachcomber parked his amnesia.
The striped bass are running better. Got a 40-pounder in the shed.
Well, let's get off the fish. I've got a few things to tell you. Things that might be biographic.
So you've gone ahead about me.
I've gone far. I might do you some good if you don't offer too much resistance. If you're afraid, don't be. My information is this. The man I think you might be has no crime to answer for. Well?
I'll try to cooperate.
Good. I'll throw words at you. The Midvale Bottling Works, Farrington Township, Jersey. A guy named Roy Howie.
Roy Howie?
You sound like it's familiar.
Yes, it... somewhere in my head.
Another name, Polly. Polly Beamer. Is that somewhere in your head or heart?
Polly Beamer. Yes, I believe I know the name.
You could be a Lloyd Beamer, from the evidence so far. Polly Beamer is Mrs. Lloyd Beamer.
Well, I'm confused.
Sure, I know, but you're standing up great. Better than I thought. Are you up to a visit with Polly Beamer?
Polly Beamer, who may be my wife?
Uh-huh. Again, only if you're up to it.
Take me to it.
I brought Smith to the Warumbo Hotel. Polly made an odd request of me.
May I talk to this person alone?
If you're going to insist.
Please, Mr. Craig. I don't relish being emotional in front of third parties.
Meaning me. Okay. I'll wait in the hall. Call me when you're ready. Polly called me in less than 10 minutes. She'd been crying her eyes out.
Mr. Craig, you can come in now.
Thanks. Any result?
This man is Lloyd Beamer, my husband.
You're sure?
Could I be mistaken?
No, I guess not. Turnabout now, Polly. Your turn to wait in the hall. It's two alone. Me and Beamer.
What on earth for?
I'm completing a job, Polly, wrapping it up. Your questions are out of order. Wait outside.
I'll go, of course, if you must.
Now you, Beamer.
Yes?
That's really your name, huh? The one you lost somewhere.
Yes, I'm Lord Beamer. I'm still a little new, but...
But you're not too unhappy over it. Pretty wife, a bottling plant. Quite a change from a beachcomber.
It sounds like you begrudge me.
If you're Beamer, I'll shake hands and say goodbye. Report back to Dr. Vanner, my original client, tell him the good news. If you're Beamer.
Well, now you're talking like you don't think I am.
I just don't know. But I will know in a minute. It seems Beamer had a mermaid tattooed on his chest.
A mermaid?
I got this from intimate sources. The sheriff, close friends of the Beamers. Strip, mister, so I can see your chest.
Now, wait a minute.
Then I'll do it for you.
Hey.
No tattoo, mister. You're a phony. Okay, what's the game? I'll answer it. Blackmail. You've got enough on Polly Beamer to make her accept you as Lloyd Beamer, even though she knows you're a phony. That's why she wanted to be in here alone with you. Find out what you had on her. Well?
I've got nothing to say.
Then keep listening. The amnesia was a fake, a pretense right from the start. You used Doc Vanner as a dodge, and then began using me. I was to lead Polly Beamer to you, worry her so she'd be apple pie in your hands. Your so-called amnesia for all these years was a device to provide an explanation for Lloyd Beamer's long absence. Wherever explanations might be needed, in Farrington Township especially. Well?
I've still got nothing to say.
Then you're a sucker. Confession you might mitigate police charges against you. You're licked anyhow. The scheme's boomeranged. You won't get Polly, and you won't get a dime.
You'll help me get off?
I'll put in a good word.
Okay. Lloyd Beamer's dead. I got to know him in the years he'd run off from his wife. He's been dead a few months now.
Who murdered him?
His wife, Polly. She discovered his whereabouts a few months ago, in the shack out on the island. She shot him and buried him in the cove. She didn't know that all the time there was an eyewitness.
You?
Yeah, me. I was out in the shed packing ice around some bass. Polly thought Beamer was living there alone as a hermit. The fact is, it was Beamer's shack. He owned it. He'd invited me to share it.
Beamer's corpse. You can lead me to it?
I can.
And you testify in court as an eyewitness to murder?
I'll testify.
Just how did you expect to crash Farrington society as Lloyd Beamer with your face?
I didn't. Polly and me, we were going abroad right away. She agreed to go to Europe with me.
With all the dough she had in her satchel?
With dough, yeah.
For a smart crook, mister, you're surprisingly stupid.
Stupid?
You panic easy.
Oh. I'm just beginning to catch on. That tattoo, the mermaid on Beamer's chest, you made that up.
So I did. I'll go call Polly in. Polly? Polly, come in and face the music.
Face the music?
Murder, baby. If you've got one of those fancy feints handy, now's the time. I just found out how you murdered Lloyd Beamer.
What?
Well, what do you know? She's gone and done it again.
You have been listening to William Gargan in another exciting transcribed mystery drama from the adventures of Barrie Craig, confidential investigator. Tonight's story, Fog Over Murder, was written by John Robert. Next week, it's the strange story titled The Hunted Husband, about which Barrie Craig has this to say.
Next week, I'm hired to hunt a husband. I catch him finally, but by that time, it's become good hunting for something else. Murder. Good night, folks. See you next week.
The National Broadcasting Company has brought you William Gargan, starring as Barrie Craig, confidential investigator. Featured in the role of Polly was Terry Keane. Don Pardo speaking.
Jack Webb stars as Sergeant Friday in Dragnet, next on the NBC Radio Network.
Welcome back. I have to say that trying to con a psychologist or psychiatrist into believing you've got a mental illness is always a risky affair. But Craig able to connect the dots and to solve the case using a bit of cheap trickery, but still got the job done. Well, we turn to some listener comments and questions. This one was on Facebook, and I missed it, but I want to go ahead and address it. He says, Adam, William Gargan was also Martin Caine Private Eye. Was that ever on the radio or just TV? It was on the radio. Martin Caine actually was somewhat unique in that it did the television show and the radio show at the same time, with the radio show being an entirely different script than what aired on television. Now, none of the Martin Caine radio episodes with William Gargan are actually available. There is a Martin Caine episode with one of the later Martin Caines, and we will end up playing that eventually. But none of the Gargan performances survive, which is somewhat surprising given how popular Martin Caine was, particularly during the Gargan period. Fix-It Fish retweets a line from a recent Barrie Craig episode. Ha! A face and a figure that makes truck drivers wet their whistle, said Barrie Craig via Adam Graham's Radio Detectives gem of a podcast. And so thanks so much for the comments. And you can follow us on Twitter at Radio Detectives. Well, this episode of The Great Detectives of Old Time Radio is brought to you by the financial support of our listeners. Thank you so much for your support. Today's episode actually comes after about 18 weeks of lost episodes. The last episode we played before we played the Christmas and New Year's episodes the last 2 weeks was the Eric Spalding concert from February 7th of 1950. The episode we're going to play today actually comes from June 20th of 1950. It's called Symphony of Death. So let's take a listen.
Hello, Yukon 28209. Yes, this is Candy Matson.
The National Broadcasting Company presents Candy Matson, Yukon 28209. Ladies and gentlemen, before we commence tonight's Candy Matson story, it's a very great pleasure to welcome as our distinguished guest this evening the widely read radio columnist of the San Francisco Examiner, who conducts his own radio column under the title Day and Night with Radio and Television. Mr. Dwight Newton.
Thank you, Dudley Manlove. Recently, I conducted a popularity poll to determine our readers' favorite radio program originating in San Francisco. Heading the list, and a top-heavy favorite, was your Candy Matson program. In behalf of the Examiner readers who participated in the poll, I am happy to present this award, which reads as follows. 1950 San Francisco Examiner Favorite Program Award. This certifies that readers of the San Francisco Examiner have voted Candy Matson their favorite local radio program in a poll conducted by the undersigned writer of the column Day and Night with Radio and Television. Congratulations to all who participate on the Candy Matson program, to Monty Masters, who writes and directs it, and to you, Natalie Masters, the Candy Matson star.
Thank you, Dwight Newton. We're doubly proud of this award tonight because next week's program will mark Candy Matson's first birthday. From all of us here at NBC in San Francisco, to Dwight Newton, the San Francisco Examiner, and most of all, you, the listeners, who've made this award possible, our very sincere thanks.
We continue now with Candy Matson, Yukon 28209.
Just a moment, I'll be right there. How do you do?
You are Candy Matson, aren't you?
Yes, that's right. And who are you?
Willa Gray.
Come in, won't you, Willa? Is there something I can do for you?
I don't quite know how to explain this, but it's my brother.
Your brother?
Maybe you've heard of him, Miss Matson. Gordon Gray.
Why, sure. The songwriter?
That's right.
Who doesn't know him? He's written almost as many hit songs as Irving Berlin. What about him, Willa?
Well, like many people I know, Gordon is a crime student for relaxation. He reads all the books, listens to all the radio programs, and naturally he's heard and read a great deal about you.
Well, I'm flattered.
When I suggested talking to you, he agreed immediately.
Talking to me, Willa? What about?
Well, it's his mental condition, Miss Matson. He's suddenly become extremely childish. All day long he sits at the piano playing nothing but uncoordinated notes.
Are you sure they're uncoordinated, or is it some new style he's trying to develop?
Miss Matson, you're familiar with Gordon's work. Songs like Lazy Old June, The Tenderness of You. What he's doing now is just musical gibberish.
How well I remember Lazy Old June. I was just a kid in high school at the time. Are you living with your brother, Willa?
No, I'm not. Just as well, too. I don't think I could take it.
Why do you say that?
These foolish notes he plays. He says he's working on a thing to be called Symphony of Death. That someone is going to kill him.
What? Now you've got me interested.
I hope so, Miss Matson. He won't talk to me. Every time I drop by, Gordon just sits at the piano, laughing horribly, and playing these kindergarten notes. As I said, he's a great fan of yours. Won't you go and just speak to my brother?
Sure, I'll see him. Gordon Gray with a shattered mind. What a pity if true. Think of all the jukeboxes that would have to settle for promissory notes.
Candy Matson, San Francisco's well-known gal private investigator. Merely trying to get her penthouse on Telegraph Hill cleaned, and she walks into a stack of memories. Memories created by a songwriter named Gordon Gray. Symphony of Death. It never became a popular composition, but it will always be on Candy's all-time hit parade, a tune she'll never forget, because it brought about a very strange chain of events and a fascinating finish to the entire story. Oh, and the in-between department? Well, here she is, the gal who never suffers from gaposis, Candy Matson.
When I went into the cold, hard world to make a living for myself, Gordon Gray was an American institution. That's when he wrote his never-to-be-forgotten The Rhapsody of You. I'd had no idea that Gray was in San Francisco. The last I'd heard, he was in New York, working on the score of a brand-new musical. So when his sister confronted me like that, naturally, I was caught a bit off base. She wrote Gordon's address for me, and like the rabbity little elf she seemed, ducked out as abruptly as she came. Then I dressed, drove over to an apartment house on Powell Street, just down from the family club. I pressed the button. It blew an ugly little noise back at me. I entered, went up the stairs to 221. The door opened.
Yes?
Mr. Gray?
Yes, that's right.
I didn't call you on the phone. I thought I'd just more or less barge in on you. I'm Candy Matson.
Candy Matson. Do come in. Oh, please, do come in.
Thank you.
So, my little sister finally got up enough gumption to call you.
Yes, she came by this afternoon. We had quite a nice little chat.
A nice chat. With my sister? Impossible. The little mouse doesn't know how to put one word after another. Oh, here. Do sit down, won't you? Place is a mess. I've got manuscript all over the floor, the highboy, the whatnot, everywhere. Highball? Spot of sherry?
Thank you. No, not right at the moment.
As you say.
I beg your pardon?
It's nothing, really. I'm just thinking of my monstrous joke. I'm going to be killed, you know.
Yes, so your sister said. Do you mind?
My sister. Young. She's young enough to be my grandchild. Do you know what? She thinks I'm slipping my cable.
Do you mind if I call you Gordon?
I'd love it. Providing I can call you Candy.
I'd despise myself in the AM if you didn't.
Candy, you're just as delightful as I had you pictured.
Thanks, Gordon. Now, frankly, what do you think? Are you slipping your cable?
Of all the idiotic... Of course not.
Willa seems convinced you are.
Willa's a mere babe, a suckling.
What about this new thing you're working on, Gordon, this Symphony of Death?
She told you about that, too, huh? That's part of my monstrous joke, Candy.
Want to confide in me? Let me know what this joke is?
I don't mind in the least. You have brains. Not many people have brains in this world, Candy, but you do. And because you have brains, I'm going to give you a challenge.
Okay, let me have it.
Oh, no. The challenge will only come after he kills me.
He? Who are you referring to, Gordon?
That's part of the challenge, Candy.
I see. Do you really believe that someone's out to kill you?
But of course. That's the delicious part of the whole thing. I'm going to be killed. It can't be avoided. That's why I'm writing my Symphony of Death.
Oh, sure. Now I see.
You're making fun of me, Candy.
No, I'm not, Gordon, really. It's just that, well, I've never met anyone who was happy about the prospect of getting knocked off.
I don't mind, actually. I've lived a full life. I've seen the world, made lots of money, been wined and dined by people in all walks of life. My music will live after me. That's all I care about.
Now I can understand.
There. You see? That's why I like you. You have brains. Shall I play my new composition for you?
If you like.
Very well. As you will discover after I'm dead. It's all part of my monstrous joke. Excuse me. Pay no attention to the technique, Candy, my dear. My fingers aren't quite as supple as they used to be. There. What do you think of it?
Gordon, I think it's a great, monstrous joke.
I knew you'd see it. It's part of the joke. You're really sharp. I knew it. That's part of the joke, and you can see it.
You pay wonderful compliments, Gordon. Thank you. But don't you think this Symphony of Death is a complete departure from your usual style? From something like, well, the Rhapsody of You, for instance?
Certainly. It's because of him. I had to write something dedicated to him, didn't I?
Well, to scramble a dangling participle, who's him?
The man who's going to kill me.
As I left, I tried to shake the picture of a cackling man playing one-fingered doodles on the keyboard, but I couldn't. The impression was indelible. When I arrived home, I was greeted by the sight of a familiar auto parked out in front. It was my number one boy, Inspector Ray Mallard of San Francisco Homicide. I invited him up to sit a spell and chew the fat.
What's new, Cupcake? I haven't seen you for several days. Seems like weeks.
Ha! A compliment. That means you're after something.
I am not. Can't I ever say something nice without you misconstruing?
Oh, okay. Compliment accepted. Good. What brings you around here this time of day, Mallard, dear? Aren't you on duty?
That's the trouble. I've been on duty for almost 48 hours straight.
I had to take a little breather for myself.
Working on a deal?
Yeah, a hot one. No leads, no clues, no nothing.
For a slight consideration, I might be inclined to help you crack the case, Sherlock.
By the way, what are you working on?
Nothing but hope and what's left of the bank account.
You mean to say the great lady Private Eye is temporarily at liberty?
I mean to say just exactly that.
Well, if I'm any judge of your business ability, you've got enough money tucked away to buy the Philadelphia Athletics from Connie Mack. What do you do with all your loot, Candy?
Sew it in hair mattresses and sleep on it. Oh, excuse me a moment, Mallard.
Sure, go right ahead.
Oh, hello, Willa. I didn't expect to see you so soon.
I hope you won't think me a nuisance, but I just had to see you.
I understand. Come in.
No, thanks. You've been to see Gordon. I just spoke with him on the phone, and he told me.
Yes, that's right.
What do you think, Miss Matson?
Very sad, Willa. How long has he been like this?
Just a week or so. He flew in from New York, and I could see the change in him right away.
How long ago did he leave for New York?
He left Hollywood for New York last month.
Was he all right then?
Oh, yes, just fine. He seemed so happy. He just finished writing the music for the new show in the East. But when he got there, the backers, as they say in show business, told him the music was no good. He said he'd return to the coast and redo it. But instead of going back to Hollywood, he came here, took that apartment on Powell Street, and he's been holed up there ever since.
Do you think being told his music was no good had anything to do with his present condition?
Oh, I'm sure of it, Miss Matson. He's always been such a sensitive person.
No, Willa. I've known several people who snapped momentarily under a terrific strain. Maybe it's not as serious as you think.
But what am I going to do?
Well, first, he needs aid, immediately. I know a Judge Conway here in town. I think he'll help you get Gordon committed to a sanitarium where he'll get the finest medical aid available.
A sanitarium? Oh, no, Miss Matson, that would kill Gordon.
Well, it's either that or have him get progressively worse.
I suppose you're right. Would you talk to Gordon? Explain what must be done? I don't think I'm capable.
Sure, I'll do it, Willa. You sit tight and I'll call you just as soon as I speak with Judge Conway.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I imagine I should inquire as to how much you charge for your services.
No, forget it, Willa. Getting Gordon Gray back to normal will be pay enough.
You're just wonderful, Miss Matson. Goodbye.
Poor kid. So helpless.
Poor kid is right. I couldn't help overhearing. She's about 90% mouse.
She and Gordon must have been poured right out of the same mold as far as sensitivity is concerned.
Is that the Gordon Gray, Candy? The famous songwriter?
That's the one.
And he's cracked up.
Mm-hmm.
Downright sure. Well, thanks, pal. Just the sight of you has picked me up considerably. I'll be getting back to the grind.
Melly, dear, hold me tight for just a moment, will you?
Sure. Don't let Gordon Gray get you down a cupcake.
Well, it wasn't a very pretty sight. And I've got to face him again. Thanks for the hug, Mallard. I'll return it someday. Mallard released his grip and left. I snapped my ribs back in place and steeled myself for the ordeal ahead of me. It wasn't going to be easy, but it had to be done. So once again I found myself ducking down Green Street, over Powell, across California, and down the roller coaster of a hill to Gordon's apartment. He answered the door, and I was met with just as much enthusiasm as before.
Candy Matson, I was wondering where you'd been. You've been gone for ages, darling. Do come in. I've got a surprise for you. When did you get back from Europe?
When did I get back? Oh, just a day or so ago.
Your letters were wonderful. I especially adored the one from Naples. What a time you must have had.
Yes, quite a time, Gordon. How's the new symphony coming along?
That's the surprise, my dear. It's completed. Long last, it's finished. To be perfectly frank, Candy, I think it's great. I've been in touch with Toscanini. He's going to give it its premiere performance at Carnegie next month. I've already sent him the revised manuscript. Can you picture it, Candy? A hushed crowd. Maestro raps his baton. The orchestra comes to full attention. Then that magnificent, firm downbeat of Toscanini's and Symphony of Death is making its debut. First, the allegretto. Then the molto andante. The audience is at first inclined to scoff, to think that Gordon Gray could write serious music, from lazy old June to Symphony of Death. Too much of a step, they'd say. Then Toscanini glides into the con moto. The audience tenses, not believing their ears. Little by little, they understand what Gordon Gray is trying to express. Then, as if it were not enough, Toscanini moves into the breathtaking finale. It soars, it moves. It transports everyone in Carnegie Hall into another world. And abruptly, Symphony of Death. The Symphony of Death is over. The audience arises as one. They shout for Gordon Gray, the composer. History's being made. More shouts for the composer. But Gordon Gray isn't there. Gordon Gray's dead. Because of him.
Gordon, listen to me.
Because of him. The world will have to be denied any further music from the pen of Gordon Gray.
I said listen to me, Gordon.
Oh. Go on.
I want to talk to you. And you've got to listen very carefully. You're sick. You need help. Your sister and I are arranging to have you sent to a home nearby. They'll have you on your feet in short order.
Sent away?
Yes.
That means he will visit me sooner than I'd planned. Very well, Candy. Tell Willa to do whatever she thinks best. I won't give her any trouble.
It's for your own good, Gordon. Believe me.
I know. Candy, you never went to Europe, did you? You were here earlier this afternoon. Isn't that right?
That's right.
You just went along with the gag.
That's right, Gordon.
Yeah. You'll be here sooner. Much sooner than I expected.
Gordon Gray went into the other room and lay down on his studio couch, face down. That's when I tiptoed out of the apartment. If only I could have peeked into the future, I'd never have left, because that was the last time Gordon Gray was seen alive. I went home, fixed myself something to eat, turned the radio on low, and sat down with a book called That Frail Vessel, a book about the behavior of the human mind. Out of one corner of my ear, I heard it. It was the 10 o'clock news over NBC with Sam Hayes. And there it was. The body of Gordon Gray had been found in his apartment. The book clattered out of my hands, and I sat there for a moment stunned. But only for a moment. In another second, I was driving over to pick up an old pal of mine, Rembrandt Watson. There was a good reason for it. Rembrandt's studying to play the cello. On the way over, I noticed the headlines. The police had the net out for Gordon's sister, Willa. Rembrandt was home. He was agreeable to going to Gordon Gray's apartment with me. And before you could bat an eyelash, providing your batting average was good, we were in said apartment alone.
My word, girl. What a garish-looking place.
It didn't belong to Gordon personally, Rembrandt. He was merely renting it.
He still doesn't deny the fact that it's garish. Can't be the truth now. Why did you want me to come to this Victorian mausoleum with you?
Just a hunch, Ducky. Are you still taking cello lessons?
Taking them? Girl, don't be ridiculous. I'm now giving them.
Even better. Just as I thought. The boys in blue haven't touched anything. The manuscript for Symphony of Death is still on the piano. Can you play single notes on the piano, Rembrandt?
Well, I can try.
Good. Run your hangnails over this.
Strange. This isn't music. Just a series of notes with no meter, phrasing, or regard for the proper time to the bar.
Exactly. Play it just the way it's written.
Very well.
And call out the notes as you go along. I think I'm beginning to understand Gordon's Symphony of Death.
As you say, C, A, D, and for no reason at all there's a rest, Candy.
D, A, D, and a rest. Go ahead.
E, G, G, and another rest.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes D, E, A, D, then a long gap in the manuscript.
You know what that spells musically, Ducky? Bad egg dead.
Utter confusion.
Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I don't think so. As we say in the movies, continue on.
F-A-G-G-E-D. No timing at all.
That spells fagged.
So am I. However, it goes on like this. D-E-A-F. Another rest, then B-E-E. Fini.
What?
Through. It's kaput. Finish.
Let's see now. Bad egg dead. Fagged. Deaf. B.
Candy, love. If you're going by the notes of the musical scale, you could spell practically anything out of A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, even from a tune like Ragmuff.
But this means something. I know it does. Gordon told me it was going to be a challenge. What? Who's there?
Don't be alarmed, Miss Matson. It's only me. Willa.
Willa, how did you get in here? Don't you know the police are looking all over town for you?
Let them look. I don't care. My brother's dead. I read it in the papers.
How did you get in here, Willa? The cops are surrounding the place.
I just walked in through the front door.
Oh, wait till Mallard hears about this. Willa, you didn't kill Gordon, did you?
No, Miss Matson. I didn't. Honestly, I didn't.
I believe you, Willa. Because I think I know who did kill your brother.
You do? Tell me. Oh, please, tell me.
Down at the Hall of Justice. Okay, let's go. Oh, Rembrandt, bring along that bust of Beethoven sitting on the piano, will you?
Pleasure, dear. I'll be glad to. Candy, this thing must weigh at least 15 pounds.
Well, you're the only man in the group.
Oh? Oh. Very well. Come along, bust. Hall of Justice or likewise.
Candy, what are you doing here at a time like this? Can't you see I'm busy?
Sure, I only want to see you busier. This is Willa Gray, remember her?
Just the girl we're looking
Well,
for.
save your breath, Mallard. Willa's innocent. She had nothing to do with Gordon Gray's death.
Okay, you know so much. Who in tarnation did?
Put that bust of Beethoven on Mallard's desk, Rembrandt.
I was wondering how long I'd have to hold this thing.
What in the name of Schenectady do I want with that?
There sits your murderer.
Candy, are you out of your head?
No, it's so complex it's simple, Mallard. Gordon Gray works like a beaver for 2 months writing a musical score for a new Broadway show. He takes the score to New York. Producers tell him it's no good. It's the first time it's ever happened to Gordon. It does something to his mind. He broods. He comes to San Francisco. His mental condition becomes worse.
So is yours.
Where you're concerned, yes. But let me finish. Here, take a look at this.
Bad egg dead. Fag. Deaf. B. Okay, I give up. What does it mean?
Bad egg dead. Gordon Gray is referring to himself. Fagged, that means he had come to the end of his rope. His musical knowledge and creative ability were running dry. Gray had nothing more to live for.
Okay, Miss Edgar Allan Poe. What does deaf B mean?
Well, that had me stumped for a while, too. Then I got to looking at this bust of Beethoven standing on the piano. It seemed to dominate the entire room. Then I put 2 and 2 together and got Ludwig von Beethoven. B was an abbreviation of Beethoven. Beethoven was deaf. Deaf B.
I don't get it.
You will. Beethoven is going to hit an all-time low. The answer lies inside that plaster bust, I'm sure. Stand back, Mallard. I'm about to splatter a genius. Take a look.
Good gravy. A small fortune in greenbacks.
That's right. And a note, too, if these eyes don't deceive me. Congratulations, whoever you might be. You learned the true meaning of my Symphony of Death. You've also just executed my killer, von Beethoven. Now perhaps he knows how it feels to be cracked up, too. Thanks for participating in my little joke, my last charade. This is my entire estate. Put it to whatever good use you may see fit. Gordon Gray. Oh, Rembrandt, do me a favor. Take Willa outside. The poor kid's pretty badly shot.
Certainly, Dove. Come along, young lady.
I still don't get it, Candy.
It's easy to fill in the gaps now, Mallard. Gordon's music was falling apart. He knew it. So he started swiping melodies from obscure Beethoven themes. But Gordon, with only his flair for writing popular music, couldn't grasp what Beethoven had originally intended. Consequently, the things he wrote were terrible. The more he copied, the more he realized that Beethoven was becoming an all-ruling obsession. It was Beethoven in the morning, Beethoven at night, Beethoven 24 hours a day until it drove Gordon completely out of his mind.
That I can understand, but what's this joke he mentioned?
Well, he was a great mystery fan. That's why he wrote this gibberish thing called Symphony of Death. A group of notes that spelled out bad egg dead, fagged, death be, and so on. All part of his warped mental condition.
Well, that makes sense. Except for one thing. How did Gordon Gray die? Exactly when he wanted to die.
Mallard, dear, I now know there are some mighty strange things in this world. Even a completely sick mind such as Gordon's has great powers of concentration. Gordon was like a captain without a ship, like a man who's been married 50 years who suddenly has no wife. You probably won't believe it, Mallard, but Gordon Gray, knowing that his mind was shot, and knowing, too, that every last bar of creative music had been drained from his heart, his soul, willed himself to die. Fantastic? Not necessarily so. There are many stories about animals who have done the same thing. And if animals can do it, why can't a human being with a so-called higher plane of intelligence do it, too? So that's what Gordon had done. Taken his life savings, sealed them into a plaster bust of Beethoven, along with his last laugh note, and sat himself down to die. In Gordon's mind, Beethoven had killed him. I can understand why, too. For just before we left his apartment, I found another manuscript. I had Rembrandt run over it. Note for note, it was the Moonlight Sonata, backwards. But in one respect, Gordon had outscored the old masters. He had completed his Symphony of Death, and Beethoven was in little pieces. That left him one up on another old master, a fellow named Franz Schubert. He'd left one entirely unfinished.
The characters in tonight's story are entirely fictitious. Any resemblance to actual people is purely coincidental. Actors heard this evening were Phyllis Skelton as Willa Gray. John Grover was her brother, Gordon Gray. Jack Thomas as Rembrandt Watson, and Henry Leff as Inspector Ray Mallard. From the star of our program, Natalie Masters, and from her husband, Monty Masters, who writes and directs Candy Matson, and from the staff of the National Broadcasting Company, we wish to express our deep thanks and sincere appreciation to the San Francisco Examiner and Dwight Newton, radio columnist of the Examiner, for tonight's presentation, naming Candy Matson as the #1 program in the San Francisco metropolitan Bay Area. Listen again next week at the same time. For excitement and adventure, just dial
Candy Matson, Yukon 28209.
The program came to you from San Francisco. Dudley Manlove speaking. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.
Welcome back. Well, as the start of the episode indicated, Candy Matson had become very popular in the city of San Francisco. And that popularity allowed Candy to take on some more serious cases, which this illustrated. This is a little heavier, certainly than the Candy Matson episodes we've heard so far. I would say it's probably the second most serious case. Perhaps the San Juan Bautista case that we'll hear in a few weeks is pretty much the only one that was as serious as this one, dealing with mental illness and decline of a genius. So Definitely different topics for Candy Matson than usual, but that's just the increased credibility of the character. Well, I'm not sure how the San Francisco Homicide Quad got someone willing themselves to death, thinking that that was potentially a homicide. In terms of the episodes that are missing, it's actually quite a few. The ones that were missing between Eric Spalding concert and this, it's kind of odd to have all these lost episodes bookend by two stories with musical titles and themes. But the ones that were missing, Pictures at an Exhibition, Angel's Camp, Wheels for Watson, The High Seas Smugglers, the Mona Bryant case, the Tony Raffaello case, the Sharp Point mystery, the Killer on Flight 14, the Weekend Cruise, the Grass Valley case, a Circus Cherry Pie, and then there was A Telegram from a Friend Part 1, and A Telegram from a Friend Part 2, which included some scheduling errors by NBC that left the listeners alarmed as to what had happened to Candy because they moved the show while they were dealing with this two-parter. And then the other episodes, Introductions, Anonymous, A Black Cat, and the Curtis Colfax case. So quite a few lost episodes, and I'm not certain if any will ever show up because they just had less exposure than a lot of the national shows we've been playing. Well, now we turn to listener comments and feedback, and this one from Phil says, still one of my favorite podcasts, although I pass on Holmes. Definitely one of the advantages of having something for everybody is that even if people don't like all the shows we have on our programs, we hopefully have something else that they will enjoy. But thanks so much for listening, Phil. It's greatly appreciated. We will be back tomorrow with Let George Do It, and then join us next week for another episode of Candy Matson. Well, before we get into today's episode, I want to encourage you, if you've not already, to pick up a copy of my book, All I Needed to Know I Learned from Columbo. It's my new ebook. It's available for the Kindle, as well as Kindle reading apps. I know they have it for BlackBerry, Android, iPhone, and iPad. And we take a look at 7 great detectives, and we draw 12 great life lessons from them, including Columbo, Nero Wolfe, Sherlock Holmes, Father Brown, and Dan Holliday. It's available for $1.99 off the Kindle store. And if you are an Amazon Prime member, you can also get it for free as part of the Kindle Owners Lending Library. All right, well, it's time for today's episode of Let George Do It. This one is called Second Degree Affection.
Personal notice. Danger's my stock and trade. If the job's too tough for you to handle, you got a job for me, George Valentine. Write full details.
Standard Oil Company of California, on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and Standard stations throughout the West, invites you to Let George Do It. Second Degree Affection, another adventure of George Valentine.
Dear Mr. Valentine, first of all, I want it clearly understood that I have no particular affection for my brother. There was a time when we shared a house together here in town, but he moved his activities to Industrial City, and his friends went with him. And so did his own stupidity. And so did whatever real love I ever had for him. However, Mr. Valentine, I intend to help my brother in whatever way I can. And to do that, I need you. I need you immediately. Because his name is Ricky Stebbins. And if you've read the newspapers, I'm sure you're aware how close my brother is to being hung for murder.
I'm sorry sorry, Bud. Haven't seen a girl like that around here.
But this is where she said she'd be, George.
Yeah, I know, Brooksy. Might ask the bartender, or you might sit down and join me for a drink. Stebbins, you say? Rhoda Stebbins? Hey, bartender.
Never mind, Buster, never mind. You were parked here. I just thought you might know.
That's what I say. Sit down. Tell me about
Look,
yourself.
buttonhole artist, skip it.
You too, lady. It's a lonesome
That
bar.
tall girl. She's heading back to the Pruitt's table.
Hey, wait a minute. Wait a
Hey,
minute.
just keep him busy. Don't worry. I'll be right here. Hello. Miss Stebbins?
Oh, Mr. Valentine?
Yeah, you wrote me a letter.
I'm sorry I kept you waiting. I've been making some telephone calls.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we spotted a purse sitting here. Wondered if it was yours. There's a man over there drinking soda water and pretending he feels it who's been watching the purse, too. So I mentioned your name out of curiosity. He wanted to sidetrack me. Why? Watchdog?
Flattering, isn't it? Having people pay attention. But I've never met him.
There's another man waiting outside. I know who he is.
The fat one?
Yeah.
Fat Lindell?
Different type.
I know. Gangster to you, I suppose.
No. Just former employer to your brother. That's enough. You see, I've done some reading up.
You don't want my case, do you?
I don't know yet. But your brother's Ricky Stebbins. He's the kind of people I don't like.
Neither are any of these others, and neither am I.
Just a preamble, invitation to be honest with each other.
All right. We'll get along.
Okay. My assistant, Miss Brooks, is over there running interference, so make it fast.
My brother killed a woman a month ago out in Industrial City. His trial's being held here in town. It was a holdup, of course. That was his specialty. And he was always fairly successful when he worked for someone who could do his thinking for him.
Like Fat Lindell?
This time he worked alone, apparently. And of course he was caught. The woman owned a ticket agency with a check cashing service attached. And he held her up and shot her. They caught him before he could even get out of Industrial. My brother's not the kind of people I like either.
So now he's on trial for murder. Today it went to the jury.
That's what I was telephoning about.
So it's a little late in the date to be looking for new evidence. What do you want me for, pallbearer?
Mr. Valentine, I've only visited Ricky a couple of times in the cell. He doesn't want me mixed up in all this, but I think he knows something he won't tell.
You mean to get him off?
I mean, anybody who helped the state at least gets off first degree, doesn't he?
Well, it depends. Court commutes to life sometimes. That is, if he really has anything to say.
I want you to come with me. Ricky's back in the jail now. It'll be visiting hours pretty soon. I haven't the slightest idea what it is. I really haven't, but I want you to talk to him. And if you won't tell, maybe we could find out ourselves. I mean, well, he should have every chance to live, shouldn't he?
What's the matter with his lawyer?
There's nothing he can find out about it.
Hey, why are all these people watching?
I don't know, I tell you.
Come on, lady. This whole story sounds like so much...
Oh. Mr. Valentine, I'm just a public stenographer. I used to be a school teacher until they found out what my brother was and fired me.
Yeah?
I've never liked him or what he stood for, but he is my brother. If I get upset over what I only look upon as a duty or a responsibility and loyalty...
George.
What's the matter, Brooksy? That guy make a pass at you?
Oh, no, he's very nice. Oh, I'm sorry, dear. I didn't mean to knock your purse on the floor.
It's all right. I forget it.
George, that man's name is Gus. He's a commercial insurance investigator. He's been watching...
What's that? What did she say?
Nothing. Skip it. I can figure things out for myself. Miss Stebbins, I know why you're being followed, being watched. I know what it is your brother hasn't told you. $60,000.
Oh, well, perhaps the newspapers...
That woman your brother killed who owned a check cashing service. It was Saturday, just before factory closing. He took almost $60,000.
Yes, that's right, but
and it's never been seen or heard from since. $60,000. Now, where is it?
Well,
Sure, that's your brother's secret. Now, come on, let's be honest with each other.
I didn't want you to think. That's all I wanted to know, to find out where the money is. You wouldn't believe I just want to help my brother, even if I don't have any affection for him. You wouldn't believe me.
Why do people do things? And don't look mad again, either. I didn't say I wouldn't take your case. Well, come on. We'll try it for size.
We're still a little early, I think. That's his window up there. It's second from the right, first floor. Plenty of bars on it. You can ask them how soon it'll be. They're pretty strict about visiting.
Well, look, you go on. We'll wait for you.
Well, all right.
We'll
but
be right here. Don't worry.
All right. Well, George?
Well, it must be a little tough to have that kind of a brother.
Don't be a sentimental sucker, darling.
I know. She's really so upset she
I
can't...
saw her slap your face. I heard. Good actress with the wrong words, that's all. Talking about her lack of affection, so you'd be impressed with how much she really cares.
Okay, cynic, okay, skip it. But I stayed out here for a reason. Yeah, I want to watch the parade, the followers. Now, there's your friend Gus down the block trying to look the other way while he gets his shoe shine.
He's been following her for weeks, George. His company has to cover the money that was stolen.
Uh-huh. Fat Lindell, I don't see him.
But, George, these people watching her, why? Unless she was mixed up with her brother in some way.
Got a match, friend?
What? Oh, yes. I think so. Yeah, there.
Thanks.
It's all right. You keep him.
Oh, no. What are you looking for up there?
Huh?
Airplanes? Or, you interested in jail construction?
What'd you say?
Now, don't get mad. But from your haircut and complexion, I'd guess you generally stare at them from the other side.
Well, I don't understand you. Keep the matches.
Second window from the right, third floor. What is it? Got a friend up there?
I said I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Somebody else watching. I noticed him, too.
Hey, who was that guy?
What?
He comes here every day and just stands and looks. I tried to sell him a paper and he shuffles off like he did now.
Search me, buddy. There's a lot I don't know
George,
yet.
look at those headlines.
Yeah, Stebbins case. They work fast, don't they? Well, it's all over.
Jury gives quick verdict. Ricky Stebbins guilty of murder in first degree.
It's the money, I tell you. That's why people are curious about him. There isn't any mystery.
Look, Lieutenant Riley, I got to get back outside. His sister will be out there by now. Somebody gave her a bum steer. She didn't even know the jury was out.
Well, neither did I. They brought him back here, didn't say anything. Now we've got to take him back to court again.
Hey, what kind of a three-ring circus?
It's a high-speed job, I tell you. They're going to sentence him today. Now.
Look, Riley, I just tore over here to ask you if it's possible that Ricky Stebbins could have known anything to help his own case. That's why I want to see him.
It took the jury 5 minutes to say guilty. Stebbins couldn't have helped himself. It was open and shut. 1, 2, 3. There were eyewitnesses to that murder he committed. 5 of them.
Yeah?
Yeah, he walked into this place all alone, held up the dame, and killed her. So what could he know except where he hid the money?
Well, his sister's waiting for me. She'll be tearing her hair out.
Sure, money. Money, that's why people do things.
I'd still like to talk to him.
Well, they're in a hurry. They'll have him put in a car out front.
Look, Riley, nobody wants to get a first-degree rap if he can help it.
Yeah, there they are, see? Across the sidewalk. But if you want my advice, you'll ask him about a sister who claims she's got no...
Hey, what the...
What's that?
Look, it's Stebbins. He's falling.
Dead. Ricky Stebbins dead.
Told you, Lieutenant. I was just going to get him in the car. He was on my arm. I heard the shot, but when that handcuff pulled me down...
Yeah, I know. Say, Mike, get the rest of those people across the street. The sister, you see her anyplace, Valentine?
There's Brooksy. No, I don't.
A man handcuffed to a policeman gets murdered. A man who's going to get the chair anyway. A man who knows where the money is. Now, I ask you, what kind of a...
Excuse me, here's the gun I shot him with, sir.
What?
Well, I'll be
the guy with the matches.
It's the first chance I had. First time he's been out in the open. But I killed him, didn't I?
Yeah, friend, yeah. If you say so, you killed him, all right. A man who would have died anyway, legally.
I know it.
And then you just step up and hand us the gun when you might have tried to get lost in this crowd. A bolt. Who are you, anyway? Come on, man, talk or I'll...
Wait a minute, Riley. You might be wrong about why people do things. About whether there's a mystery or not. Come on, speak up, friend.
Why should I? What difference does it make? I killed him. You won't be cheated. I'll take his place for you. It's over now. You can send me an electric chair. It's what I want. First degree.
return to tonight's adventure of George Valentine in just a moment. It's no miracle when Chevron Supreme gasoline makes your car run smoother and more powerfully than ever before. It's not even a secret why more and more Western motorists choose Chevron Supreme for that new car feeling. Let's look at the facts. Most raw gasolines contain impurities that form engine-sticking gum. The only way to get rid of the impurities is to refine them out. Chevron Supreme, which is made from carefully selected crude, is the gasoline that's super refined to prevent power-robbing gum. Super refined to keep your car's fuel line, carburetor, and spark plugs free of gum. That's why Chevron Supreme gives your car faster starting every time, smoother pickup in traffic, super hill climbing power, and full mileage in the kind of driving you do. So for that new car feeling, get super refined Chevron Supreme at standard stations and independent Chevron gas stations. At all these stations, you can count on quality products and top service. For here's where they say and mean, we take better care of your car. And now back to tonight's adventure of George Valentine. It's all for money, says Lieutenant Riley. There's no mystery about it. That's why people do things. But if your name is George Valentine, you're not sure you agree because Ricky Stebbins, a convicted murderer, has been killed. Shot down in the street as he was handcuffed to the arm of a policeman. Yet his killer, instead of running, has walked straight up to the police and given them the gun. And why? Because he wanted to do it. Because he's quite willing to face the electric chair.
So he's a nut. He's as loony as a coot.
Sure, Riley, sure. Let's see that stuff from Ricky Stebbins.
Oh, I've already gone over it. It's this guy I want to figure out. This guy sitting there staring at nothing. Come on, who are you, I said?
Leave me alone. What difference does it make?
Yeah, you see? Oh, but it is the money, isn't it? You were working with Stebbins, right? You were in on the original crime of his, and you know where the money's hidden, huh?
What money? I don't know.
You didn't want to give him a chance to tell anybody else where the money is, so you killed him, huh?
Riley, hold it. Leave him alone for a minute, will you? What's this note in Stebbins' stuff? Right 3, left 14. Looks like a combination.
Oh, sure. I'm way ahead of you. He must have just written it, see, in jail after he heard his verdict.
The only reason he'd write it down is to give it to somebody.
Yeah, when he knew he was going to be sentenced to the chair.
Might be a locker somewhere, huh?
I've already figured where Stebbins checked the money. My sergeant's heading for Industrial City right now.
Well, how about Miss Brooks tagging along? Huh?
Oh, everybody gets in the act. But what I don't understand...
Oh, don't be so modest, Riley. You've at least figured it out that if Stebbins just wrote this note, then he hadn't told anybody where the money was yet. He'd kept his secret.
Sure. Sure, unless there was an accomplice like this punk here, and, of course, his sister. Who else could get near him in court? Who else did he care 2 pins for or think of when he knew he could never save the money for himself? Oh, Valentine, I thought you were a sucker for a sob story.
Oh, stop it, will you? First things come first. Sure, Riley, I'll see the girl. Sure, we'll find this fat Lindell who's been tagging her, who used to work with her brother.
I sent out an alarm for Lindell already.
Only, Riley, the first thing I can see is...
We're right back where we started.
Leave me alone.
Pal.
Leave me alone, will you?
Now, look,
please?
friend, Ricky Stebbins should have died, maybe. The state was going to take care of that.
I couldn't let him. I wanted to do it.
Well, aren't you going to say anything in your own defense?
I killed him. There's nothing to say.
Oh, this guy obviously did it for the money, Riley. Sure. And he wants a first-degree rap so he can enjoy the money better.
Right 3, left 14. Well, I'm sorry, miss.
But, Sergeant, you said this was the only public check room that used combination lock.
Here in Industrial City, that's right, Miss Brooks.
Well, it don't show, and it would show on our listen.
This is it right here. Look, right
I
3.
know this is it, and that's box 412, and you want to see what's in box 412? Okay, I'm aware because I saw the guy put it in just yesterday. Oh, all right, okay, I'll cooperate. There.
Golf club.
What in the name
But you gotta be shown. So I show you.
But the combination...
They change, miss. Will you give me a chance? A month ago, the combination you got was on box 379.
A month ago.
When that crime was committed. The numbers are rotated, don't you see? Because in this crazy check room, there's a maximum limit of 1 week.
You mean this is one of your numbers, and if Stebbins did put the money here, that box 379 or whatever you said, then it only could have stayed a week. That's the storage limit.
Yeah, but Stebbins been in jail for a month. Now, what happens at the end of the week if you just leave something here?
Then we open it and impound the contents. But don't you see, that didn't happen. The records don't show. What do you think I'm so mad about? The money was here. It must have been. But do I get a whack at the reward? Huh. I tell you, Sergeant, we've been through every box and it's not here now.
Wait a minute. Ricky Stebbins was caught very fast that day a month ago. He checked the money here, but he certainly wouldn't have had time to get it out again. Sergeant, it proves Ricky Stebbins had an accomplice. George, don't you
Wait a
see
minute,
what...
Brooksy. This is it. Yeah, here we are, room 12. Oh, it's not much of a place, is it?
Is this where you live, George? That man in jail?
His name's
who would...
Boxer. We found out that much.
It's a 50-cent room.
Mm-hmm.
George, if this Mr. Boxer doesn't care what happens to him, you'd think he'd
He
cooperate
collapsed on us, Angel. Oh, sure, he'll talk in time. He's not trying to hold back or anything. He just hasn't been eating regularly.
Not much baggage.
No.
Toothbrush, extra shirt.
I think we guessed right about his being recently out of prison. While he's checking that angle.
Well, he might have been mixed up with Ricky Stebbins before.
Brooksy, all we know is he's a guy who's been standing outside that jail just waiting for one thing. His first chance to get close enough to Stebbins to kill him.
People do things because of money, Riley says.
Where is the money now? Oh, no, Angel.
George, look here.
Huh?
Oh, no, I don't mean it. It's just a letter.
The little guys?
Boxer. Mr. Frank Boxer. Addressed to him in prison.
Tennessee. We can check that.
There's several of them all in the same hand. Listen. Darling, I'm so excited to think your parole will be coming soon. To actually think that I can walk down the street with my husband and know that all the trouble is behind, and now he's going straight forever, is almost more than I can...
Husband? Hey, wait a minute.
It's all like that, George. So are the others. My darling husband. Here. And now that my ticket agency and check cashing service is so well established...
And there's a signature. Return address, Industrial City.
Why, people do things. It was Boxer's wife that Ricky Stebbins murdered.
So I'm wrong. So everybody's wrong. We checked through the prison. Boxer wasn't even released from back there until the day after it happened.
What's he say about it?
Still nothing. What would you say? He didn't know his wife had been killed until he got out here. We found a bellboy at the first place he stayed.
Yeah.
Ted Boxer just sat there in his room staring at the newspaper and reading those letters for 2 solid days. I asked him if he and his wife ever had trouble, and he started to cry.
He's going straight, apparently.
He hadn't treated her so well. But it was going to be different. Going to start fresh. We found the hot shop where he bought the gun. Guy said he looked like he was in a trance. For killing a rattlesnake, he said. He had to do it himself, he said.
Mm-hmm. So that's it. So that's the case.
Yeah. Wife was all he had to live for, and now...
That's the terrible part. Ricky Stebbins would have been executed. Only now it's poor Mr. Boxer who's in real trouble.
Well, you can't take a human life into your own hands. But in this case, the sympathy will cut it down to manslaughter. A year or two, maybe. But he won't even ask for that.
George, where are you going?
See a lady about some cash.
Where are you going to find Rhoda, George?
Oh, that's easy, Angel. I just go down to...
Oh, hey, there you are.
Huh?
Lieutenant, the boys just brought in a guy I think you ought to take a look at.
Oh, okay.
What were you going to say, George?
Just go down to the insurance company who's been watching us so carefully. Only, Brooksy, don't you see who that guy is? That drunk they just brought in?
Valentine, this guy's been slugged.
The insurance man. It's Gus.
Oh, my head. I watched like a hawk, I tell you. I haven't let her out of my sight for one solid month.
Yeah.
Since 5 minutes after they arrested that no good brother of hers.
Okay. Where is she now?
Oh, day and night, I tell you. Like a hawk I watched. I had assistance. I made notes.
Come on, Gus.
Come
Snap
on, what
out of
happened
it.
to you? Who hit you? Come on.
I don't know. Oh, I don't feel so good. Coming around the corner. I don't know what hit me. But I was tailing her back to her brother's house.
Well, this is the house. Doors open, lights left on.
Nobody home.
I don't believe it, do you?
Upstairs.
Come on.
Where are you, Miss Stebbins?
Look out, he's got a gun! Look out! George!
Oh, no, you don't, Buster.
Lindell, so you're the guy, huh?
He followed me. He knocked out that
Drop it,
insurance
Lindell. I
man.
said drop it.
Oh, thank heaven. He was pointing the gun at me.
All right, take it easy, Miss Stebbins. You're all right.
Come on your feet, Lindell.
Let go. I didn't do anything.
Oh, no, not much.
He's been here at the house every night this week. He admitted it when I'd been away or in town. He's come here.
What if I have?
Looking for money, Buster? Is that it?
I claim the reward. That's what I do. I claim the reward.
What reward?
Well, there is one. Must be one of some sort.
Now, look, Buster.
I found it, I tell you. It's right here, stuffed into the back of the radio. That's where she put it.
Well, I'll be...
Wrapped in newspapers. Bundles of it.
The $60,000. 60,000 reasons why people do things.
Mr. Valentine, I didn't know it was there.
Oh, your name's Stebbins, isn't it, sister? That's good enough for me. She hired you, Valentine, to make Lindell think she didn't know where the money was. Well, that's not a bad stunt to take the heat off
Are
of
you finished, Riley?
Ah, now look here,
I asked him to get Boxer in here, too. Okay, here he is. Thanks, Sergeant.
Yes, Mr. Valentine. But we know all about him.
Who's that, Mr. Valentine?
Man who shot your brother, Miss Stebbins?
She's, Oh, yeah.
I didn't care for him to take him in, Mr. Box.
All right, skip it. Riley, tell me something.
Yeah?
Wasn't the Stebbins house ever searched for that money before?
Of course it was. The day after the crime, a month ago.
Uh-huh. So it got there since then. Lindell's been looking for it ever since, apparently, so that rules him out. It's a cinch he didn't put it there.
But that doesn't prove she didn't.
The newspapers wrapped around the money. Look at the dates on them, Riley.
Huh? Well, 3 weeks ago, so what?
Think back and remember what the insurance man said. That he or his assistants have been watching Rhoda Stebbins ever since 5 minutes after they arrested her brother. Well, why didn't they see her go get it?
George, that's right.
Yeah. Stebbins himself could have moved it. He couldn't have moved it. He was in jail.
Go on.
Oh, Miss Stebbins, you told me you thought your brother had a secret that might have saved him from the chair. Well, the location of the money wasn't a big enough thing. But he might have wanted to tell who hired him to hold up that place, kill Mrs. Boxer.
Hey, now, wait a minute.
Mr. Valentine, I don't think that he...
And that somebody could have been a man who was still in jail.
What are you talking about, George?
I don't understand.
Oh, yes, you do, Boxer. While you were still in jail, just in case you needed an alibi or anything went wrong. Only it did go wrong anyway. Stebbins got caught. Oh, you must have sweated plenty when you read that in the papers.
No, I didn't. I don't know what you're trying to do.
The poor, tragic convict whose wife wanted him back, who'd been mean to her before, but now she had a nice, lucrative business. Sure, maybe she loved you. But you paid her back in spades, brother, didn't you? Oh, nice guy.
She was all I had in the world. I wouldn't...
I've heard all the neat little clues you've planted. Moping in hotel rooms, buying guns in a trance. You know that when Stebbins heard the sentence of the chair, he'd tell about you. So, Buster, you pulled the most daring stunt I ever heard of. You walked right up and killed him and handed the gun to the police. It was the only way you could save yourself.
But he confessed to Ricky's murder, Mr. Valentine. That's right, George.
Yes, Boxer, you pulled out all the stops, all right. Because with that trail of sludge you left behind you, you knew what had happened. I heard what you said, Riley. He'd get manslaughter, maybe, a year or two, maybe.
Look, why would I do a thing like hiding the money here?
Why don't you stop giving me the feed lines, Buster? They go back down your throat. You never wanted that money. That was Stebbins' $60,000, his rake off for killing your wife. You knew you'd get another $60,000 all for yourself.
But, George...
After all, Riley, it was his wife's money, wasn't it? Well, what do you think those investigators are so anxious about? unless every penny of it was insured.
You know, that's kind of neat, George. How to make $60,000 twice as big. Stebbins would have gotten his, and then Boxer would have collected the insurance on it.
Oh, sure, Brooksy. Very neat. Nice people.
He must have planned it all out from those long letters his wife wrote about her business.
Yeah, but he's going to get the whole works now, instead of a couple of years and a sympathetic pat on the back from the jury.
George, why did you believe Rhoda in the first place?
Well, because she tried so hard to be honest, I guess. To pretend she didn't have any particular affection for him.
Yeah. You think she really did?
Well, Angel, let's call it a case of second-degree affection. Remember the last time you stopped at a hotel? Chances are that you appreciated the kind of service you got, or you wouldn't have stayed at that hotel very long. Well, the same spirit of first-class service marks standard stations and independent Chevron gas stations. Wherever you drive in the West, at these stations you're valued as a guest, and you need never feel obligated to buy something. These men know that if you're satisfied with the care they give your car, like inspecting the tires and battery, they can hope to see you another day. For them, it's just plain good public relations to keep you pleased with their car-saver services. So wherever you drive, rely on independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations. High-grade service and top-quality products like Chevron Supreme gasoline are why these stations say and mean we take better care of your car. Tonight's adventure of George Valentine has been brought to you by Standard Oil Company of California on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West. Robert Bailey is starred as George with Virginia Gregg as Brooksy. Let George Do It is written by David Victor and Jackson Gillis and directed by Don Clark. Wally Mayer appears as Lieutenant Riley. Doris Singleton was heard as Rhoda, Mark Lawrence as Boxer, Eddie Fields as Gus, Larry Dobkin as the Sergeant, and Gigi Pearson as Helen. The music was composed and presented by Eddie Dunstetter. Your announcer, John Heaston. Listen again next week, same time, same station, to Let George Do It. This is the Mutual Don Lee Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Well, once again, we see a bit of a battle here between cynicism and optimism about human nature. And the result is a split decision, because one party was clearly doing everything for the money, while the other was being truthful. This one is interesting as well, and I think this is the great strength of Let George Do It, and George Valentine as a detective. In that he does not let the obvious sidetrack him from what the truth is. And that is very important because as this case illustrated, those two are not usually or always the same thing. And his ability to avoid being blinded while everybody else, even Lieutenant Riley and sometimes even Brooksy, are falling for the line of the villain. It's always an interesting process to see. Well, we turn now to our listener comments and feedback. These from Podcast Alley. Best ever, says one listener, and love your site. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you so much for your support and your great comments. We will be back tomorrow with Sherlock Holmes, and join us next Wednesday for another episode of Let George Do It. Well, this episode of The Great Detectives of Old Time Radio is brought to you by the financial support of our listeners. Thank you so much for your support. Well, we return today to our regular order on Sherlock Holmes. Today's case is from January 18th, 1948, and it is the case of the Lucky Shilling.
New York, the makers of Clippercraft clothes for men and 1,036 leading retail stores from coast to coast present the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. Our stories are based upon the character of Sherlock Holmes, created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Sherlock Holmes is played by John Stanley, Dr. Watson by Alfred Shirley, and the dramatizations are by Edith Meiser. Well, here we are once again, about to lift the knocker of Dr. Watson's familiar front door. Phew, it's covered with icicles.
Come in, Mr. Harris. Come in before you congeal.
Evening, Dr. Watson. What a night, a real January sleet storm.
You must be chilled to the bone.
On the contrary, in my new Clippercraft overcoat, I'm as snug as a bug in a rug.
And as fashionable as Beau Brummel himself. But come along, take it off now. You're as bad as my youngest godchild. Give him a new toy or hat or shoes, and he has to take him to bed with him. You don't sleep in your Clippercrafts, I hope, Mr. Harris?
No, as a matter of fact, I don't go quite that far, Doctor. But what Sherlock Holmes coup d'essai are we have tonight?
Coup d'essai, dear me. We are elegant tonight, Mr. Harris. As a matter of fact, that is a rather apt description of tonight's adventure. It concerns a coup or stroke of chance with a certain lucky shilling. Holmes was not in the ordinary sense of the word a gambling man, although the chances he took were sometimes too long for comfort. Consequently, you can imagine my surprise when he suggested we take on two of the crack whist players of the Bagatelle Club at stakes that were considerably over our heads. Yes, actually the stakes we were playing for were a young man's honor, possibly his life. But don't you think this would be a good place to mention a certain investment that is never a gamble?
You wouldn't mean the purchase of a Clippercraft suit or overcoat, Dr. Watson?
Touché, Mr. Harris. As you would say, touché.
Well, despite these unusual times, Clippercraft clothes still sell for prices exceedingly low for such truly fine quality. From their custom-like appearance, you never guess just how modestly priced they really are. You're assured of fine materials, exceptional workmanship, and comfortable fit in Clippercraft. Suits are only $40 and $45. Top coats and overcoats but $40, and sport jackets but $26.50. You get these amazing values because of the unique Clippercraft plan that today concentrates the buying power of 1,036 of the nation's finest stores from coast to coast. Year-round economies in manufacturing and distribution result from this great plan, and the savings are all yours. See these sensational Clippercraft values at your own local independent store. Compare them with clothes selling for many dollars more. And now, Doctor, to get back to your game of whist at the Bagatelle Club.
Yes, this was the adventure Holmes always referred to as the case of the lucky shilling. As a matter of accuracy, it was more than sheer luck that enabled Holmes to win with that particular coin. But to begin at the beginning, it was a lazy spring morning in the late 90s. I emerged from my bedroom with a well-developed case of spring fever.
Which Holmes jolted you out of.
He did indeed. Before I had time to down my morning coffee, he bustled me into a hansom cab, my revolver in my pocket, and the scent of adventure in my nostrils. Holmes was cold and stern and silent, his brows knit in thought and his thin lips drawn into a sardonic smile. A sure sign that we were on the prowl in the dark jungle of criminal London. Holmes, do you have to look so sinister? After all, it's a beautiful spring morning. The buds are budding, the birds are singing.
And one of our well-known young men about town has unaccountably disappeared with a not inconsiderable sum of money, Watson. His mother sent me a frantic summons early this morning. Turn in here, driver. Park Lane. Number is 427.
427 Park Lane. That sounds vaguely familiar, Holmes.
Yes, we've been there before. This is the house, driver. Here you are. Keep the change.
By Jove, of course. It's the establishment of Lady Maynooth, wife of the Earl of Maynooth. It was through that window up there that her second son, the Honorable Ronald Adair, was shot by Colonel Moran's famous air gun.
This time it's her oldest son, Lord Robert, who's missing. Is it any wonder the letter she sent me verges on hysteria?
But you don't understand, Mr. Holmes. Robert is a most devoted son. He'd never leave me in my condition without some sort of explanation.
Your condition, Lady Maynooth?
As you know, Mr. Holmes, I left my husband, who was governor of one of the Australian colonies, the year before last, to return home to England for an operation for cataract of the right eye. My second son and my daughter accompanied me.
That operation, I believe, was a complete success.
It was, Mr. Holmes. But my son's tragic death, and the knowledge that my left eye was also affected and in due time would have to be operated on, left me in a horrible state of nervous depression.
Understandable, Holmes?
Yes, quite.
So, as the time for my second operation approached, my husband insisted that our oldest son, Robert, should be here with me.
How long has he been in London, Lady Maynooth?
Less than a week.
Hardly time for him to get into any scrape with the usual bad company.
Oh, it couldn't be anything of that sort, Dr. Watson. Robert is too shy and, well, perhaps fastidious is the word. He much preferred to spend an afternoon in the British Museum or the National Gallery than galloping up and down Rotten Row or winking at pretty nursemaids in Kensington Gardens.
Pity. A certain amount of kicking up of the heels in the young Lady Maynooth is healthy. It prepares them for life. They learn what to beware of later on.
Mr. Holmes, you terrify me. You don't suppose Robert has fallen into the clutches of one of those theatrical hussies at the Gaiety who are always marrying young men with titles?
Now, calm yourself, Lady Maynooth. Granted your son will inherit a title, I hardly think enough coin of the realm goes along with it to interest one of the Gaiety girls. Am I right?
Unfortunately, yes. That's why I'm so particularly worried about Robert. He's never had the handling of a large sum of money before.
Before what?
Before yesterday. I feel I must have no secrets from you, Mr. Holmes, if you're to find Robert. I need money. Desperately. My second operation for cataract is to be performed by the famous eye surgeon, Sir Lionel Tupper.
Oh, brilliant ophthalmologist. Best in the field.
Don't interrupt, Watson.
He is brilliant, Dr. Watson, but also frightfully expensive. His fee for my last operation was 500 guineas.
Why, it's outrageous.
But he's worth it. Every penny. Well, to make a long story short, I had no cash in hand. No possible way of raising any in the immediate future. So I gave Robert my pearls to pawn. It was yesterday afternoon. That was the last any of us saw of him.
Pardon the question, Lady Maynooth. They were valuable pearls?
Oh, yes, Mr. Holmes. They were worth many times the 500 guineas I hoped to raise on them.
I see.
But, pardon me, I see Parker, the butler, is motioning me from the front hall. I think he has something to tell me.
Another case of a scion of the upper classes gone wrong, Holmes?
Not necessarily, Watson, but quiet, she's coming back.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, I'm so relieved. Parker tells me that Robert has just come in the back way and gone up to his room.
Oh.
I'm so sorry to have brought you out on a wild goose chase, but you can see there's no further need for you.
On the contrary, Lady Maynooth, unless I'm very much mistaken, this is the moment when there's the greatest need for me. Which is your son's room?
First door left at the top of the stairs.
Come along, Watson, up we go.
What's wrong, Holmes? What do you think is that?
I may be wrong, but... No, the door's locked.
You hear that, Holmes?
Yes, Watson, it's not the first time we've heard that devil's tattoo.
In heaven's name, what is it?
The sound of heels beating against a closet door, Lady Maynooth. Your son has hanged himself.
Oh, confound the explanations, Holmes. Help me break down the door. There. He'll do. Phew, that was a narrow squeak, old man. Don't do it again.
Oh, Robert, how could you?
I'm sorry, Mother. I guess I'm just no good. I lost the money, Mother. The money they gave me for pawning your pearls. There's nothing to pay for your operation.
What does it matter? Nothing. Nothing counts but having you safe and sound again.
How did you lose the money?
At cards, Mr. Holmes. I guess I'm not as good a whist player as I thought I was.
You young scoundrel. You mean you took the money for your mother's operation and gambled it away?
But I had to, believe me, it was the only way. At Sartorius and Fletcher's, the money lenders where I went to pawn the pearls, I was ushered into the office of Mr. Juan Sartorius himself when they found out it was the Maynooth necklace I had in my pocket. Well, when I entered the door, the old boy was friendliness itself. He stood back at his desk, bowing and wringing his fat little hands. And when I pulled the pearls out of my pocket, he almost snatched at them. His hand fairly shook as he adjusted his jeweler's eyeglass to one shiny black eye.
Beautiful. But yes, they are beautiful, and so perfectly matched. Tell the Lady Maynooth I shall be very generous. To her, I shall offer 7,000 guineas for her pearls.
But, Mr. Sartorius, I'm afraid you don't understand.
No?
The pearls are not for sale. I couldn't sell them if I wanted to. You see, they're part of the estate, and as such are entailed.
In that case, I'm not interested.
But surely a slight loan. It's only for a short time. Until the rents from our Lancaster properties are due. My mother must have that operation.
Tell her to wait till the rents are paid.
But she can't, don't you understand? A delay may leave her blind. Oh, please, can't you let me have the money? It's only 500 guineas. I'll pay any rate of interest.
Young man, you touch my heart. I give you 200 at 15%.
200? But I need 5. I must have it.
300, then. But that's the last word.
300? What good is 300 in my position?
You are a man of the world, I believe. You belong to clubs, no? Seems to me I hear you're a good whist player, as your brother before you. All the Maynooths have what is called the card sense, no?
Yes. Well, that is, I suppose so. I always managed to win a bit. But I never played for high stakes.
Why not, you idiot? A young man with a 300 guinea nest egg who understands cards can do very well for himself, no?
Oh, Robert, you didn't go to one of those whist clubs.
Yes, Mother. I chose the Bagatelle.
The Bagatelle? Merciful heavens! That's where your brother met that dreadful Colonel Moran, who caused his death.
But, Mother, that was an unfortunate exception. Why, the Bagatelle is a gentleman's club. They're famous for having the most brilliant, but most honest games in all London. And besides, you know the old saying, lightning never strikes twice in the same place.
But in your case it did, Lord Robert.
Well, yes, I'm afraid so.
You had a particularly bad run of cards?
No, I can't even claim that.
Then there was no crooked dealing?
Oh, good Lord, no. It was just that, well, nothing seemed to work out for me.
While your opponent's hands dovetailed perfectly, eh?
That's about the size of it, Mr. Holmes.
You played a set game?
Oh, no, sir. We cut for partners after every rubber.
And who was the big winner?
Well, it was Mr. Horatio Webster. If he'd been able to see straight through the cards, he couldn't have had better luck.
Oh, yes, Mr. Horatio Webster. Double or nothing, Webster. He'd rather gamble than eat, I understand.
So would I if I had his luck.
I wonder if it's all luck. No one's luck can be as good as Mr. Webster's unless he sold his soul to the devil.
That wouldn't be a metaphor for suggesting the gentleman isn't entirely honest.
Go to the head of the class, Watson.
But we can't prove anything. What can I do?
Just this. See that Watson and I are presented with visitors' cards to the Bagatelle. I rather think we'd enjoy an evening at the tables.
Holmes, have you taken leave of your senses? You haven't played whist for over a year.
Even so, my dear Watson, I fancy I may be able to teach Mr. Double or Nothing Webster a trick or two.
After all, Holmes, why I have to crawl into this high collar and a stiff shirt just to spend the evening playing cards is more than I can...
Stop spluttering, Watson. The Bagatelle is a very elegant establishment. We must live up to the tradition.
Balderdash. What's more, I can't say I look forward to having you as a partner for the entire evening.
Come now, Watson. My method of playing whist may be unorthodox, but it is rather brilliant.
Possibly, but it's enough to give your partner nervous prostration. You play every game as if it were poker. Now, please, Holmes, promise that tonight you won't bluff.
I'll try to control myself, Watson. Now, where did I put my lucky shilling?
Yes, and just remember, we've drawn every cent we have in the world out of the bank in order to have this fling.
Don't be so conservative, Watson. We may lose a bit of our nest egg during the course of the evening, but don't let it upset you. Before the game's over, we shall have won back not only our losses, but enough to pay for Lady Maynooth's operation as well.
What makes you so sure of that?
This shilling. My lucky shilling. I can't possibly lose with that on my side. Pretty, isn't it?
Where did you get that silly thing? You never carried a pocket piece before.
Never needed one before.
Then how do you know it's so lucky?
I've been working on it all afternoon.
A gin and tonic for Dr. Watson, Pomfret, a scotch and soda for Lord Beavers, and another for me, and a brandy for Mr. Holmes.
Double brandy, Pomfret.
It's indeed a pleasure to welcome you to the Bagatelle Club, Mr. Holmes. I've heard so much about your mental prowess, I admit I'm prepared to spend a very unprofitable evening. Shall we cut for a deal?
Your own reputation is fairly colourful, Mr. Webster. They say you've cornered the market on fortuity. Watson has an ace.
In this club, the ace is low. Dr. Watson gets the deal. If you will each shuffle the cards, gentlemen. Mr. Holmes first.
You next, Lord Beavers.
But poor old Beavers is quite deaf, you know. Fortunately, it doesn't affect his card sense. Oh, now my shuffle. And now the dealer. Ah, here are drinks.
Your cut, Mr. Webster.
Oh, yes, with pleasure. There. Deal them out. May the best team win. Shall we play a set game, gentlemen, or shall we cut or rotate after every rubber?
Oh, by all means, let's stay where we are. I'm not the athletic type myself. I loathe a lot of bobbing about. Too much like playing musical chairs.
Spades are trumps. Lead, please. And that gives us 3 tricks, which means game and rubber. Not to mention a 4 on account. That's, let me see. Yes, you each lose another £2, 11 and sixpence, gentlemen.
Dear me, so we do, Watson? Oh, settle up, old chap. That's a good fellow.
What?
Afraid all I have in my pocket's my lucky shilling.
Doesn't seem to have brought you much luck so far, Holmes.
Give it time, Watson. Give it time.
Pomfret, Mr. Holmes's glass is empty.
Thank you, Pomfret.
Cut, please, Mr. Holmes. Thank you. I hope you don't mind the way old Pomfret hangs around the table. He's been a waiter here for 40 years. The game still fascinates him.
Yes, so it seems. Ever try a hand at it himself?
Good Lord, no. He doesn't know one card from another. Clubs are trump this time, gentlemen. Four more points for our side. I'm afraid that's another rubber for us. You better throw away that lucky shilling, Mr. Holmes. Oh, what's that, Pomfret? The same all round. Pomfret has indicated the bar is about to close.
Great Scott, is it that late?
You sure you wouldn't like to quit, Mr. Webster?
Not me, as long as my luck holds out, Mr. Holmes. Of course, if you've had enough...
Oh, not at all. We haven't even started to warm up. Eh, Watson?
Warm up? Really, Holmes, the way you're playing tonight. Twice you've trumped a good trick of mine. And that last lead, what in heaven's name was that?
My dear Watson, don't tell me you didn't recognize it. That's the new American lead. Fourth from your longest and strongest suit. Very ably explained in the little treatise by Mr. Nicholas Browse Trist of New Orleans, USA.
Oh, to blazes with Mr. Trist.
That gives us another game in rubber.
It's getting to be positively monotonous, eh, Watson?
Holmes, have you any idea how much we've lost during the night?
Vaguely, Watson, vaguely.
Confound that fly. Go away.
Yes, it's getting to be daylight. Even the flies are waking up. Sure you don't want to call it quits?
Just one more rubber.
One more loss and we'll be cleaned out, Holmes.
Oh, very well, Watson. Before that happens, I'll make you a little side bet. Put a shilling on the table in your corner. Now, I'll put my lucky shilling here in mine. I'll bet you a guinea that fly lights on my shilling before he does on yours.
There he goes again over in my corner. That's a good chap.
That makes 10 guineas I owe you, Watson.
Yes.
Hello, here comes another fly to get in the game. Perhaps he'll bring me luck.
I doubt it. But let's get on with the rubber. It's my deal, I believe.
It's funny how the last rubber is always the longest. I say, Mr. Holmes, I wonder if I could enter a shilling on your sweepstakes.
Why, certainly, Mr. Webster. But in that case, I think I'll turn my coin over, just for luck. Your shuffle, I believe, Mr. Webster.
Yeah. Coy little beggar, that fly. Nearly had him on my coin that time. No, by Jove, he's lit on yours, Mr. Holmes.
Perhaps my luck has changed, at last.
Here's 5 guineas says it hasn't.
Fair enough.
I'm out. That's too steep for me. Cut, Mr. Webster. Thank you.
By Jove, look at the silly little buzzer. Oh, you win again, Mr. Holmes. How about another go at it? Same stakes.
Delighted, Mr. Webster.
Have you ever thought this to yourself? How can I get the advantages of group buying and still trade at the local independent store I trust? Well, the answer is really a very simple one, for through the amazing Clippercraft plan, we've made it our business to bring you remarkable values in clothes at the local store of your choice. It took real planning to accomplish this, and here's what happened. The Clippercraft plan concentrates the buying power of 1,036 stores from coast to coast, bringing you beautifully tailored Clippercraft suits at only $40 and $45, top coats and overcoats at only $40, and sport jackets at only $26.50. Yes, selling expensive clothes at inexpensive low prices at the nation's finest independent stores is the great big idea behind the Clippercraft plan. That's why men who know insist on Clippercraft clothes. So be sure to visit the Clippercraft store in your city.
These leading stores in the metropolitan area are proud to add their names to Clippercraft in your suit, top coat, and overcoat. In Manhattan, John Wanamaker Men's Stores, Broadway at 8th and 67 Liberty Street. Saks 34th, Broadway at 34th. In Brooklyn, Abraham and Strauss. In Newark, New Jersey, Boulevard Men's Shop, Kresge Newark. And in Jamaica, the B&B Clothes Shop, 16408 Jamaica Avenue.
Now let's return to the Bagatelle Club, where Holmes is trying to lure a fly with his lucky shilling.
Confound it. You win again, Mr. Holmes.
That makes 200 guineas you owe me, Mr. Webster. Shall we say double or nothing?
Sold.
Oh, gentlemen, let's not forget there's a whist game going on.
That's right, you are. Hearts are trump. Your lucky suit, I believe, Watson. By the way, did you know that the original name for trumps is triumphs? There's the little beast on my coin again. It makes 400 guineas you owe me, Mr. Webster.
I'll double the bet, Mr. Holmes.
If you like.
Holmes, are you out of your mind? You've nearly won back our losses.
As I was saying, trumps were once called triumphs. That's what Shakespeare's alluding to in Antony and Cleopatra when he says, "She, Eros, has packed cards with Caesar and false played my glory unto an enemy's triumph." Act 4, Scene 12.
Confound it, Holmes. The fly has chosen your coin again.
That's 800 you owe me. The usual, Mr. Webster? Double or nothing?
Holmes, are you out of your senses?
Suits me, Mr. Holmes. I figure the law of averages must break in my direction for a change.
Nice little fly. Careful now. There's 1,600 guineas riding on you, old chap. Careful, Watson, don't provoke.
Oh, confound it, Holmes, how can I keep my mind on the game with a 1,600 guinea bet on the table?
Just follow suit, Watson, just follow suit.
Oh, confound it, will that fly never light?
Patience, Mr. Webster, patience. The history of the game called whist is rather colourful, you know. The earliest form was called ruff and honours.
Holmes, did anyone ever tell you the word whist means hush or shut up? Pray do so.
Sorry, Watson.
Confound it, Holmes. The fly has chosen your shilling.
And I take the final trick, which makes game and rubber. The evening is finished, gentlemen.
One moment, Mr. Holmes. Before I settle up, I'd like one look at that shilling of yours.
With pleasure, Mr. Webster. Careful of your fingers, though. It's slightly sticky.
Sticky, by the Lord Harry. And sweet to the taste. I've been robbed. Holmes, you're a cheat and a thief. I refuse to pay my losses.
Better welsh on your debts, eh? I wouldn't advise it, you know. Really, I wouldn't. Or I shall be forced to report to the governors of this club that the Webster luck at cards is largely due to old Pomfret, the waiter. He stands behind your opponent's chair with his silver serving tray, angled in such a way that from where you sit, it mirrors every card in your opponent's hand.
Well, that was a neat little trick on Holmes' part, Dr. Watson. Did Mr. Webster pay his debt?
Oh, naturally. There was more than enough to cover Lady Maynooth's operation and recoup our losses.
But tell me, what was it Holmes had on his lucky shilling to attract the flies?
A mixture of rum and sugar. Absolutely invisible, you know. It's an old trick, invented by two famous racetrack touts in the 90s. When they had a particularly bad day at the track, they always managed to get into the same railway carriage with a heavy winner. Needless to say, by the time they'd reached London, the winner generally had empty pockets.
And now, Dr. Watson, would you like to tell us what story you have in store for us for next week?
Now, let me see. Well, next week, I think I'll tell you a story that began with a young man in a gory bandage who collapsed on my waiting room floor, and which ended with Holmes finding himself in the tightest spot, literally as well as figuratively, of his entire career.
Sounds promising, Dr. Watson. What do you call the story?
The Adventure of the Engineer's Thumb.
The makers of Clippercraft clothes and 1,036 leading stores from coast to coast have brought you another in the new series of broadcasts featuring the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is produced and directed by Basil Lochran, with special music by Albert Berman. If you don't know your Clippercraft dealer, write Clippercraft, 200 Fifth Avenue, New York City. If you'd like to serve with America's foremost military organization and yet remain at home as a civilian, sign up as a citizen Marine with the organized Marine Corps Reserve. Inquire at your local Marine Corps recruiting office tomorrow. Be sure to listen next week to Sherlock Holmes in The Case of the Engineer's Thumb. If you'd like to attend the Sherlock Holmes broadcasts in New York, see your local Clippercraft dealer, and he'll tell you how to obtain your tickets. This is Cy Harris speaking for Clippercraft Clothes. This is the world's largest network serving more than 450 radio stations, the Mutual Broadcasting System.
In just 25 seconds, you'll hear 15 minutes of news reported by Melvin Elliott. Fly Eastern Airlines new type Constellations nonstop to West Palm Beach in only 3 hours and 53 minutes. For reservation, simply call Eastern Airlines or your travel agent. The Bamberger Broadcasting Service, WOR, New York.
Welcome back. Well, not your typical Holmes case, as Holmes in this episode basically ends up conning a con. Well, he not only does ensure that the good lady is able to get her required surgery and teach the villain a thing or two, particularly a new way in which he's able to cheat other gamblers. He taught a valuable educational lesson about the danger of gambling, or if you prefer, how kids who have friends who don't listen to Sherlock Holmes might have been able to go out the next day and pick up some money on the playground. Anyway, an interesting episode. All right, well, now we turn to listener comments and feedback, and Rich says, I know I hear all the great comments, but I wonder if you really know how much your efforts are appreciated. I work in a factory and volunteer in a geriatric rehab hospital here in London, Ontario. I'm working with my recreation therapist to reintroduce your shows to a few of those residents. Imagine the boredom of loneliness day after day, then to recover their youth through a trip down memory lane with Adam and his motley crew. You are the man, and Andrew is a magician. Cheers from Canada with huge thanks, Rick. Well, definitely appreciate it, and Andrew definitely is a magician with what he does with some of the audio files I give him to work on. And I encourage everyone to check out his old-time radio westerns podcast, otrwesterns.com. But definitely appreciate the comments, and, I think that many of the folks who have the fondest memory of radio may be just unaware of how much of it is actually available. Tens of thousands of hours of audio performances from Bob Hope, Abbott and Costello, Dragnet, yours truly, Johnny Dollar. You Bet Your Life, People Are Funny. Just a lot of radio is available. The folks who are in their mid-70s and late 80s may, as a rule, just not be as technically aware. So if you have someone from that age range who remembers radio, let them know. And it'd probably be a nice idea to help them out in terms of being able to listen to it in whatever degree of technical aptitude you have in terms of making CDs and things like that. I would say that probably the bulk of our audience is not people who remember a radio, at least not from its first run. I've had quite a few who've emailed in and said, we listened to it in the 70s and 80s on reruns, but fewer that actually heard these when they were first being played back in the 40s and 50s. That's kind of what the listener survey indicates, which makes for an interesting segue. Appreciate we've had 69 people fill out the new listener survey that our friends at Blueberry like, and that can help us in terms of getting sponsors. So if you've got a moment, please fill that out at survey.greatdetectives.net. If you've not filled out our listener survey or filled it out before November, we've got a new survey. I encourage you to fill that out, survey.greatdetectives.net. This episode is brought to you by the financial support of our listeners. And I want to say a special thanks to Richard, who provided some support from over there in Illinois, and we'll be sending him access to the premium side, as we do with all donations of $7 or more. Thank you so much. Your support is greatly appreciated. I do want to let you know, coming up on Sunday, we have our next video theater episode coming up, and this one is a dandy. We've been doing, of course, that great female detective, Candy Matson, and we're going to be playing a movie featuring one of the most famous of all female detectives, Nancy Drew, a Nancy Drew reporter. Now, if you read the Nancy Drew novels, you may not quite recognize the way Nancy Drew is portrayed here. If you can get past it, it's a really fun movie. It's really written in the comedy mystery style that was very popular in the 1930s with the coming of The Thin Man. This one is, I think, actually a pretty good movie for families. Not a whole lot of scary scenes. Murders happen off stage, and it's just a fun story that I heartily recommend. There's actually one scene in this movie that reminded me of Adventures in Babysitting. Not the whole movie, just this one particular scene. If you've seen that movie and you watch this one, I think you'll probably figure out which scene I'm talking about. But anyway, we're going to get into today's episode. This one is called The Jeanne Maxwell Matter. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
From Hollywood, it's time now for John Lund as Johnny Dollar.
We're ready on your call to Boston. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes?
Mr. Semplin?
Yes, and I don't believe I remember you, Mr. Dollar.
Oh, we've never met. Your company hired me here in Hartford to investigate the Jeanne Maxwell death.
Oh? It's odd that they didn't advise me.
Oh, they probably will. I called you to find out the name of the officer in charge of the case, if you could give it to me.
Well, it's a, Lieutenant DeRosa.
DeRosa, huh? Do you happen to know what their theory is, if any?
Theory? Well, I don't think they've arrived at a definite theory.
Still a toss-up between murder and suicide, huh? Okay, Mr. Semplin. I'll be in touch.
John Lund in a transcribed adventure of the man with the action-packed expense account. America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office, Corinthian Life Insurance Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Jeanne Maxwell matter. Expense account item 1, $175. Phone call to Boston, advising your manager there of my assignment. Item 2, $28. Car rental and mileage for my Hartford apartment to Police Headquarters, Boston.
What's the matter, Dollar? Don't you trust us?
Not up to me to distrust you, Lieutenant. But these insurance people get uneasy when there's a choice between suicide and murder. Unless the murder motive is the policy.
And you don't think there's a chance of that?
Well, I wouldn't say definitely not, but the Maxwell girl made her mother her beneficiary. And her mother's an invalid in a rest home.
Did you know the mother had taken up with an old flame?
No, I didn't.
Goes to see her a couple, 3 times a week. Crazy things have happened. I'll get the file. Sit down. Now, this is all we've got so far, pending coroner's inquest and autopsy report. Here's a photo of where she was found.
Shallow water. That's the bridge?
Yeah, she was lying right about there. But I don't think you have to worry about suicide, Dollar. As far as I'm concerned, it wasn't.
I'll buy that, too. Wouldn't say this bridge is a suicide type. Too low.
Yeah, and there's another thing. I've been on the force for more years than I like to count. I've run into my share of suicide. Never known a woman to do it this way without taking off her coat.
Oh?
Usually shoes, too. I've learned that's part of a generally accepted pattern.
The Maxwell girl didn't fit the pattern.
Well, here's the way she looked. Coat on, belt still tied, shoes. Purse is missing. Searching the stream for it.
How old was she?
21.
She was a beautiful girl.
I noticed that. I'm trying not to, but with her I couldn't help it.
How much questioning have you done, Lieutenant?
Not much, or rather not as much as we'll do after the inquest.
When'll that be?
The day after tomorrow. You want anything more here?
No, thanks, Lieutenant. I'll check with you later. I drove out to the stream where they found the girl's body, and there I chalked up another point against her death being a suicide. The bridge from which she had dropped was a good 4 miles from town. Boston had better bridges to offer within the city limits. I followed the riverbank and found the approximate spot from which the police photograph had been snapped. On the assumption that she'd been brought there in a car, the placement of her body in relation to the 2 lanes on the bridge made it look as if the car was going toward Boston, not away from it. 5 minutes later, I was heading the same way.
Hello?
Miss Mary O'Neill?
Yeah.
The manager suggested I come up. He told me you shared this apartment with Jeanne Maxwell.
That's right. Who are you?
Well, my name is Dollar. I'm from her insurance company. I'd like to talk to you about her if I could.
I suppose so, but there's nothing I can do now. This is the biggest shock I ever had. I always said there'd be trouble, but I never thought she'd do anything like this.
Maybe she didn't.
that supposed to mean?
Well, there are signs that say maybe she didn't commit suicide.
There are?
Do you think she had any reason to?
That's what I said. I never thought she would. Oh, sit down. Anything.
Thanks. Did you say you expected trouble?
Yeah. I kept telling her. It was the way she went. Like she couldn't live fast enough. Like there wasn't enough time to get everything done. And she'd been like that ever since she got rid of... her mother went into that hospital. Jeanne was all tied down, taking care of her before.
What could have caused trouble?
Well, I'm not saying she was wrong or anything. But there were too many men.
Do you mind telling me who they are?
I don't know. Only about one, Harold Corey. He's gone with her the longest. He's a big blonde truck driver.
Harold Corey.
He drives for the Seaboard Trucking Company. Sometimes he goes way out to the West Coast. And while he was gone, Jeanne didn't stay home and catch up on her reading, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think I do.
Out with a different guy almost every night. I didn't cry, but she'd never tell me who they were. You think somebody killed her, don't you?
Would you help me try to find out?
What should I do?
Well, you didn't want to pry, but I get paid to. I'd like to look at her things.
I suppose it's my duty, sort of, isn't it?
In a way, yeah, but I can't force you to.
Oh, I know it's the thing to do. Some of her drawers are locked, but I'll show you what I can.
I started on the locked dresser drawers. They gave up and opened after a brief struggle, but contained on the whole things that might normally be locked up because of their value. Imported perfumes, expensive lingerie, and some jewelry. Only thing that looked as if it might have been hidden for the sake of secrecy was under the jewel box. It was a gold house key with a heart-shaped bow.
I never saw that before. Never saw the perfume before either, but I smelled it.
That's a few $100 worth of scent. And the rest of it there. Was Jeanne used to such expensive things?
Not that I know about. Harold Corey sure couldn't shell out that kind of money. And that heart-shaped key. That's cozy.
I'd like to keep it if I could.
Oh, I don't know about that. After all, it isn't mine. I'll not get into trouble.
Oh, you won't, I promise you. I'm working with the police on this thing. I want to find out where it was made, if I can, and who ordered it.
Oh, I get it. Sure, I wouldn't stop you from doing that. Even if I could.
A phone call to the Seaboard Trucking Company gave me the information that Harold Corey was out on a run to Philadelphia. It was expected about 3 in the morning. Expense account item 3, $7. Drinks and dinner after I checked into the Bristol Hotel. Item 4, $1. Phone call to Jeanne Maxwell's employer. Edward Hollis was at home and would see me.
Come into the living room, Mr. Dollar. You may as well be comfortable.
Nice of you to see me, Mr. Hollis. I thought it would be better to do it this way rather than bother you at work.
Of course, and I appreciate it. The atmosphere at the office has been gloomy enough. Oh, this is Mrs. Hollis, Mr. Dollar.
How do you do?
Quite well, thank you. I didn't know the poor girl, but it's a dreadful thing.
Yes, I'm afraid it is.
I simply don't understand. A young girl like that with everything to live for.
May even be worse than that.
Worse? How could it be worse?
Looks more and more like her death was not a suicide.
Mr. Dollar.
I didn't mention it on the phone. The police think it was murder. So do I. I thought it'd be better to save the blow until I got here. Murder's pretty messy.
I can't believe this. Why did they think that?
Well, almost intuition, not quite. They know how people commit suicide. On an average, all suicides do certain things. The Maxwell girl didn't do any of them.
This is a shock. I suppose I could be dragged into a courtroom along with everybody else who knew her. Beatrice, you run along upstairs. There's no reason for you going through this.
All right, Edward. I think I'd rather. Good night, Mr. Dollar.
Good night. I'm sorry, but it couldn't be helped.
Of course you couldn't. I understand. Please don't be long, Edward.
No, I won't, dear. Could I mix you a drink, Mr. Dollar?
No, thanks. I'll make this as fast as possible. I don't know how much you knew about Jeanne Maxwell's private life.
I knew nothing. I have a number of girls in the office, and it's been my philosophy to remember that not too long ago I was young, too. So long long as they do their work well, I ask no questions. As a matter of fact, I have no right to.
Sure. From what I've gathered, she was mixed up emotionally. She didn't have much freedom because of an invalid mother she took care of.
Yes, I did know that.
When the mother went into a hospital, Jeanne began to make up for lost time. She led her friends to believe that she was friendly with a lot of men. But I don't believe that.
Oh?
I think it was one man. One with enough money to buy her expensive things, perfume, jewelry, even a gold key.
I'll have to admit that she was a beautiful thing.
You say she worked with a number of girls at your office?
Yes, there were 11 others.
Out of those 11, did she have any close friends that you know of?
Well, let's see. The Dyer girl, Grace, that is. They seemed to be quite friendly. I couldn't be sure of any others.
Oh, would you give me all their names then? I'd like to talk to them. You know, find out if something might have come out over lunch or cocktails.
Yes, of course. Perhaps it'd be better if you phoned me at the office in the morning. I could give you their addresses as well.
All right, we'll do it that way. Well, thanks very much, Mr. Hollis. I'm sorry meeting you couldn't have been more pleasant. The next morning, I had a list of 11 feminine names and the address of Jeanne Maxwell's truck driving friend. By 10:30, I was following up the ladder.
Come back later. I can't see anybody now.
I'm an investigator from Jeanne Maxwell's insurance company. I want to talk to you about her.
Wait a minute.
Sorry to bother you. My name is Dollar.
Come on in. I've been out of town. I didn't know about what happened until I got the paper this morning. Really got me rocking.
Yeah, I can understand that.
How much do you know about it? Why'd she do it?
She didn't.
What do you mean by that?
It's not suicide, it's murder.
Murder?
You knew her pretty well, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, pretty well.
Did you buy gifts for her?
Oh, once in a while. Birthday, Christmas, times like that.
What kind of gifts?
What are you driving at?
Can't you remember?
Oh, yeah. Candy, handkerchiefs, things like that. I don't think I like your approach, mister.
Now, calm down, Corey. I'm giving you a chance to rehearse before the police get at you. When did you see her last?
Night before I left for Philadelphia.
When was that?
2 nights ago, Tuesday. I left at 5 Wednesday morning.
She was found Wednesday morning.
I know that.
You're in a bad spot. You know that?
You telling me people think I killed her? Me? I loved her. I wanted to marry her.
I'm sorry, friend. In this situation, that's a motive, not an alibi.
Get out of here, will you? Get out and leave me alone.
You're not helping yourself with this act. You're making it worse.
Get out. Get out before I do have a murder to answer for. Get out!
Lieutenant Durrison.
This is Dollar, Lieutenant. I just left a friend of the Maxwell girl. Name of Harold Corey.
Dollar, I've been kicking myself for not getting the name of your hotel yesterday.
I didn't have one then. But I've got a few things to pass along to you now.
Oh, that's what I meant. If I could have located you, I could have saved you the trouble.
What do you mean?
The death was suicide after all.
What? How come?
Autopsy report. There was a concussion from the drop from the bridge, but it wasn't the cause of death.
Hey, wait a minute, not so fast.
The cause of death was carbon monoxide. Looks like she pulled the suicide for to embarrass somebody, and her body was tossed from the bridge to get her out of the way.
We'll return to yours truly, Johnny Dollar, in just a moment. Tomorrow night, Gangbusters brings you authentic, hard-hitting proof that crime does not pay. All the facts right out of police files. The program names names and describes actual manhunts just as they took place. It's a Saturday evening event for adventure fans right here on CBS Radio. Don't miss Gangbusters, tomorrow night over most of these same CBS radio stations. Gangbusters. Now, with our star, John Ludd, we bring you the second act of yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Come on in. Oh, hi, Dollar. Sit down.
Thanks. This, new theory of yours.
What's the matter? Don't you like it?
Well, I thought I was making progress in the other direction. Give it to me again, will you?
Yeah. Here's the autopsy report. Death by asphyxia caused by presence of large amounts of carbon monoxide. Agent unknown. That's it. Probably automobile exhaust. It's most popular these days.
You believe this, Lieutenant?
I believe what's in the report.
And how did you say she got into the river?
Oh, I said maybe she committed suicide somewhere so that somebody would get involved. Get rid of her. She was probably dumped in the stream. What's the matter, Dollar? I thought you'd be happy with the suicide evidence.
The insurance company hired me to dig up the facts. If it was suicide, all right. But if it wasn't, they want to know that, too. And I still don't think it was.
Why not?
From what I've learned, she wasn't the type. She liked to be alive. And she played it hard enough to leave some motives lying around. Jealousy, for one.
That boyfriend of hers, Corey?
He's a possibility. I talked to him, and for my money, he deserves checking. And then there's this.
What is this unlock?
I wish I could tell you. It was undoubtedly given to her by somebody. I'd like to know who. You think you could put a couple of men on it? Find out where it was made?
All right, Dollar. I'll stick my neck out that far for you. I'm under orders, you know. I'll have to be assigned before I can investigate.
Sure, I understand.
Well, I'll take your story upstairs and see what the brass says. Let me know what else you find, huh?
Yeah, I will. Oh, you have the address of the old flame you mentioned? The mother's friend?
Still like to settle for fraud, wouldn't you? Well, the desk sergeant will give it to you. His name's Paul Anderson.
I'm from Jeanne Maxwell's insurance company, Mr. Anderson. Wonder if you could spare me a few minutes.
Yes, I suppose so. Come in. You're the adjuster? So soon?
I'm an investigator.
Oh? I didn't know she had a policy.
Yeah, she did. $25,000 to go to her mother.
I see.
But her death has been classed as suicide, which voids the policy. The 2-year self-destruction clause is still in effect.
That's a pity.
Why do you say that?
It's the least you could have done for poor Mildred.
That's her mother?
Yes. An extremely young mother. It was almost ruined her life for that girl.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, the daughter was born when Mildred was only 17, and she was left to care for the child herself. I helped as much as I could. Oh, I don't want you to misunderstand. There's nothing to be hidden. I suppose it is unusual. I did meet Jeanne first. But when she took me to her home and I met her mother, I realized that Jeanne was no more than a cheap little opportunist. The complete opposite from her mother. As I say, I suppose it is unusual.
Yeah, but that doesn't make any difference. The point is that you dropped the girl in favor of her mother. Is that it?
It wasn't the gross situation you evidently wish it had been. Now, look here, this has gone far enough. You've asked me these questions for one reason, so that you can draw your own conclusions. Haven't you?
I didn't know it showed.
Well, it does. You think I sent Mildred to the home to get her out of the way, don't you? Well, that's not the case, but you can think what you like. Go ask Mildred if you care to.
I won't bother. Do you know anything about a gold key that Jeanne had?
A gold key? No, I don't know anything about a gold key. I've known very little about Jeanne at all these past months.
Yeah. So many people seem to know so little about her.
Hello, Mr. Dollar. I've been wondering how you were making out.
How are you, Mary? The police been here yet?
No. I'll be scared to death if they do come. I feel guilty the minute one looks at me.
That's common enough. Have you remembered anything that might help?
No, not a thing, Mr. Dollar. I hardly slept last night. It's creepy. With her room just like it was the last time she left it. I've got to either move or get somebody else in there.
Yeah. Now, Mary, Did Jeanne ever mention a Paul Anderson to you?
Anderson? No, I don't think so. Not that I can remember, anyway. She was always kind of secret about things.
She did talk to you about her mother, though.
A little, yeah, about her being in the hospital.
Anything about how she got there?
No, except I got the idea Jeannie thought it was wrong, how much fun she was having without her mother to worry about.
She never told you who was paying the bills.
No, who was? This Anderson guy?
Yeah. You sure she never mentioned him?
I'm sure I'd remember if she did, because I was curious, and she never mentioned any of them.
Okay. Thanks, Mary. It was 4 p.m. then, and at 5, I was standing in front of the Seaboard Trucking Company building on Columbus Avenue as Harold Corey backed a big rig into a parking area and headed for a short-order restaurant across the street. Hello, Corey.
What this time?
The dispatcher tells me you're going out on another run. Pretty short layover, isn't it?
Yeah. You decided to look into the way I do my work?
Oh, I just wondered if there was a reason for this quick run.
Yeah, there is. I asked for it. I figured driving I could get my mind off this thing. Anything wrong with that?
Maybe not. You know how she died?
I read about it. Carbon monoxide.
Yeah. Police have decided that doesn't sound much like murder. What do you think?
She's dead. That's as far as I can think.
You knew about Paul Anderson, didn't you?
What about Paul?
Well, that he might have been more interested in Jeanne than he was in her mother.
I suppose you're just doing a job, aren't you? Well, if what you say is true, I didn't know about it. If I had known about it, I would have killed him, not Jeanne. Now leave me alone, mister. I can't take any more.
Well, I don't enjoy it either. As you say, I'm just doing a job. I checked that night with 6 of the 11 girls who had worked, lunched, and chatted with Jeanne Maxwell. Their collective description was of a girl who listened to and enjoyed what other people said, but had little to offer herself. None of them knew anything about her private life. But the next morning, the police located a goldsmith who said he remembered making the heart-shaped key. I went out to see him, then got back to Lieutenant DeRosa.
How'd you make out with that fussy little man, darling?
Well, we found the day the key was ordered, and he remembered a few things, because a councilman's wife came in the same day.
What?
The customer, J. Carter was the name he gave, mentioned a cottage on a bay. That's east. The girl's body was found northwest of here. I think she was dumped from a car coming toward Boston from out there. So, I think the cottage is in that direction.
Deduction, yeah.
Well, if I were going to dump a body, I wouldn't carry it through town to take it to that bridge, would you?
I'm being paid to think about another case. I couldn't sell the murder pitch upstairs, but I tried, and I'll buck for promotion if you're right and upstairs is wrong.
I don't suppose you could earn that promotion by assigning some men to cover that northwestern section, could you?
Not a chance. That's county. Division of responsibility.
Yeah. And we'd all be surprised to know how many criminals take advantage of that. Expense account item 4. $35, mileage. Covering a 2.5-day canvass of real estate offices northwest of town. Object, a cottage probably rented previous to the month of June by a man possibly using the name J.E. Carter. It was a vague lead that meant morning to night legwork, but on the third afternoon, it paid off.
Yeah, we don't rent much up here, that's why I remember. She was a dark-haired girl, is that right?
That's right.
Yes, the Ensign place out on Butch Road.
Has anybody been there in the past few days?
Not that I know about. We used to be there every 2 or 3 days, too.
How was the rent paid? Cash or check?
By, cashier's check.
Or was it regular? Definite day of the month, I mean? And do you know the bank?
Yeah, between the 1st and 5th of each month since May. Check on the commercial bank.
Oh, thanks. Now, I'd like to ask one more favor. Would you take me out to the cottage?
I certainly will. If it's a police affair, I'm not the one to stand in the way. Well, Mr. Dollar, I've always said that I personally vouch for the people I do business with. But you never know, do you?
That's a profound truth in any business.
I'll certainly try to be more careful in the future. Do you want to go now?
Yeah, I think I've seen enough. Let me lock it. I want to see if this key fits.
It did.
Yeah, it did.
Well, didn't expect to see you again.
Didn't you, Mr. Hollis? You thought you'd get away with it?
What did you say?
And there's no reason to be clever with each other. I know you killed her. You rented a cottage out beyond Mystic River. You used the name J.E. Carter.
Come into the other room. Yes, you're right. I did become infatuated with her. If you'd known her, you'd understand. I realized last week that it had to stop, and I told her. She'd been with that young Corey boy. I told her that even if I were single and eligible to marry her, I would advise her to hang on to him. Someone her own age.
That was last Tuesday night.
Yes. She left the cottage, and I heard her drive off. Or at least I thought I did. When I went out, I learned what she'd really done. She'd committed suicide in the car. You can hardly blame me for wanting to keep the secret.
It wasn't suicide, Mr. Hollis. You know it, and I know it.
All right, Mr. Dollar. I'll make my statement to the police.
Fine. I'll drive you down.
Thank you.
Edward.
Beatrice, go back upstairs.
No, Edward, I won't.
I insist, Beatrice.
What good would it do? After what I've done because I lost you, why should you ask me to go upstairs while I lose you again?
I forbid you to say another word.
Mr. Dollar, she had taken him away from me because she was beautiful, and I no longer am. I was waiting in their cottage. When they came in, I struck her.
Is this true, Mrs. Hollis?
Yes. I killed her. And since there was nothing left of our lives, we carried her to the garden.
Beatrice, what have I done? What have I done?
Expense account item 5, $110. Final bill for car rental. Item 6, $85 miscellaneous. Expense account total, $266.85. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, stars John Lund in the title role and is written by Gil Dowd with music by Eddie Dunstetter. John Lund can currently be seen in the Universal International picture Just Across the Street. Featured in tonight's cast were Jeanette Nolan, Howard McNear, Ted DeCorsia, Virginia Gregg, John McIntyre, Barney Phillips, and Dick Ryan. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is transcribed in Hollywood by Jaime Del Valle. This is Dan Coverly, inviting you to join us next week at the same time when John Lund returns as
yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
And remember, Tarzan brings you his adventures Saturday evenings on the CBS Radio Network.
Welcome back. Well, this plot seems somewhat familiar. It didn't have this ring of something, oh yeah, we played that a month ago. I actually went back and checked, this was originally aired as the Jones-Sebastian matter on October 28th of 1950. So for the radio listening audience, they're probably not getting too much deja vu here, as even if they were Johnny Dollar listeners at the time, it was 2.5 years since they've heard the story. For us, it's only been about a year. There were a couple differences. The big difference was at the end of the Jones-Sebastian matter, Johnny explained that Joan wasn't dead when the wife put her in the back of the car, and the carbon monoxide in the back killed her. In this episode, that whole thing is left totally unresolved and unsaid. And in some ways, I think that's they want the audience to be focused on the drama of what happened and the story, as they leave it. As a writer, you don't want people going around, asking questions like the Johnny Dollar, played by Edmund O'Brien, begged, goes, well, I don't know how the Commonwealth will view this, because she wasn't dead when she was put in the trunk. She died as a result of fumes. And people going home and wondering, I wonder whether she will end up going to jail. And this is an episode where I think Lund's version may actually be somewhat superior to the O'Brien version. Edmund O'Brien, I love the way he acts, and when he's given a chance to really show forth his this sort of intensity he's got as an actor, like in the Yankee Pride matter, which is my all-time favorite Edmund O'Brien episode, when he's able to really show and play to that hot intensity. Does a fabulous job. In a lot of the Johnny Dollar episodes where he kind of goes on ride-alongs, with the police as they solve the case, and there's not a whole lot of action, and you're just kind of dealing with these horrible, awful situations, his kind of gruffness and hardness could come off as somewhat indifference. So for these type of scripts, Lund may indeed be the better actor, definitely. And speaking of Lund, we will have a John Lund extra. It'll be an episode of Suspense. I hope you will listen to that and enjoy that. And that's for those of you who have the app or the premium site. All right, we have a couple quick listener comments from Podcast Alley. I'm self-employed and work on the computer all day. This show keeps me entertained while I'm working. From Scarlett. Thanks so much, Scarlett, and hope we can keep you entertained for a long while yet. And then a comment from Charlie. Love it. Well, thanks so much for all your support on Podcast Alley. Encourage everyone to cast your vote once a month over on Podcast Alley. podcastalley.greatdetectives.net. Well, that will do it for this week. We will be back next week on Monday with Barrie Craig, Confidential Investigator, and join us back here on Friday for yours truly, Johnny Dollar. In the meanwhile, cast your vote on Podcast Alley. Send your comments to box13@greatdetectives.net. And if you've not filled out our listener survey, please do so, survey.greatdetectives.net. But from Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.